Chapter 712. 4,000 years ago the Azure Sea sect suddenly split into two sects, the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Wave sect. The previous huge sect suddenly collapsed, which greatly shocked the cultivation world of the North Sea. From then on Jinling passed down a rule. Apart from Jinling sect's encampment and dojo, any other Jinling cultivators who opened up cave abodes, dojo or side courtyards in other regions would have to rotate after 10 years. The purpose of this rule was to prevent the high-ranking cultivators from the sect from having the idea of breaking out after establishing their own sects for too long. Back then Tian Shui Laozu guarded Huanyu Island. Later it was Tian Kong Laozu and now it was Jiang Tianlin Laozu. After Lu Ping opened up Huangli Island, Jiang Tianlin Laozu was the first to guard it, which was later replaced by Tian Qin Laozu. As for the Jingzhe Island in the East Sea, after Tian Xiang Laozu became a grand cultivator and returned to Tianling Mountain to guard it, it was left empty for a period of time. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu returned to the North Sea from Ying Mountain Range to replace Tian Kong Laozu in guarding Huanyu Island, Tian Kong Laozu went to the East Sea to guard Jingzhe Island. After Lu Ping opened up Huangli Island, although he was not considered a true high-ranking cultivator at that time, he now had the right. Luckily, Lu Ping had always been a hands-off manager, handing Huangli Island to Hu Lili to manage. In addition, Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Tian Qin Laozu guarded the island. Lu Tianling Laozu's authority as the sect leader was growing day by day. Therefore, although there had always been people in the sect who were jealous of the large cultivation resources on Huangli Island, they had always tried to get their hands on the benefits of Huangli Island under the name of Jinling's tradition of rotating guards. They had never succeeded. Yingshan Immortal Academy was naturally no exception. Logically speaking, this time Guotianshan Laozu also needed to be rotated. However, this place was after all far away from the North Sea, and it was still in its early stages. In addition, they needed to hide the fact that Celestial Academy was Jinling's backing. Dharma adepts were such a huge target. Once people found out that Celestial Academy's Dharma adept had suddenly been replaced by someone else, it would naturally raise the suspicions of other powers. Therefore, Guotianshan Laozu's position could not be changed, but Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan's position as Mountain Elder had to be changed. Just Guotianshan Laozu's identity as a direct disciple meant that even if Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan did not take up the position of Mountain Elder, he could not stay in Celestial Academy for long. Even though the change of Celestial Academy's Mountain Elder would also attract the attention of other powers, compared to replacing Tianshan Laozu, this target was much smaller. Moreover, Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan was not too far away from the peak of the 6th level of core forging. He could completely use the excuse of breaking through to the late stage of core forging to resign from his position as Mountain Elder. This time, Tianfeng Laozu and Tiancheng Laozu had secretly sneaked into Central Plains. Although Lu Ping had already guessed some things from Tianshan Laozu's words, in reality, the other meaning of the two Laozu's arrival was also to supplement the Jinling's rotating inheritance. Since it could not be rotated, then it was simply a situation of mutual restraint. Even though everyone was well aware of this, this was, after all, the tradition of Jinling and no one could say anything about it. Several days later, in the cave under the cliff at the back of the Immortal Academy, the ultra-long distance teleportation array lit up once again. Lu Ping accompanied Tianshan Laozu outside the stone room to welcome the arrival of the two Laozu. After the destruction of the Ying Tian sect, no more large sects appeared in the northern part of the Yulon River. Without the suppression of the Ying Tian sect, many of the medium-sized sects in this region began to develop with all their might, intending to raise their own sects into large powers, obtain the recognition of the 5 great cultivation holy lands of the Central Plains, and rule over a region of the Central Plains. However, in the past 4,000 years, the various powers in the Hebei cultivation world had fought over each other. Every time a sect rose to prominence, they would be suppressed by the other sects, forming a situation of mutual restraint. In the end, no sect was able to successfully develop into a large power. This time, it was the Spirit Martial sect's turn to have a chance. The Spirit Martial sect had been hiding their strength and biding their time for hundreds of years. They had always kept a low profile in the Hebei cultivation world and secretly accumulated their strength. After nearly 1,000 years of hard work, the Spirit Martial sect finally possessed the strength of a large sect. Even so, the Laozu of the Spirit Martial sect still decided to keep a low profile. Although the Spirit Martial sect already possessed the strength of a large power, once the various medium-sized powers of the Hebei cultivation world joined forces, the Spirit Martial sect would still be suppressed. Therefore, the Laozu of the Spirit Martial sect decided to continue to endure. They would either wait for the sect's strength to grow to the point where the other sects were unable to stop them, or wait for a suitable opportunity to quickly obtain the recognition of the 5 great holy lands and never establish their position as a large sect. And it just so happened that at this time, the Hebei cultivation world had become the first stop for the Asura and the demonic cultivators to wreak havoc, opening the prelude to the great calamity of the cultivation world. For the spirit martial sect, this was an opportunity that they had no choice but to fight for, no matter good or bad. The entire Hebei cultivation world had been harassed by Mara. All the sects had suffered heavy losses from Mara's attacks, and the spirit martial sect was no exception. However, when the spirit martial sect faced the attack of Mara's army, in order to reduce the sect's losses, they had no choice but to display their full strength in front of the Hebei cultivation world. 2 grand adepts, 3 mid-dharma adepts, and 6 early dharma adepts. The 11 dharma adepts of Laozu had shaken the entire cultivation world. The spirit martial sect had hidden themselves so deeply. With the sect's protective array and the powerful strength of the 11 dharma Laozu, although the spirit martial sect had suffered a large group of Asuras and demonic cultivators, their losses were the least in the entire Hebei cultivation world. Among the 11 dharma adepts, Laozu had not fallen. On the other hand, almost all of the other mid-sized forces had dharma adepts who had been injured or killed by Mara's rampage. Among them, the Gu family was one of the ones who had suffered the most. The Gu family originally had 3 mid-dharma Laozu and 5 early dharma adepts. They were considered above average among the mid-sized forces in the Hebei cultivation world. However, during Mara's attack, 1 early dharma adept had fallen, and another early dharma adept had been seriously injured, almost losing any chance of improving his cultivation. Another mid-dharma adept had suffered light injuries and would need a few years or even longer to recuperate. This kind of loss was considered a serious blow to the Gu family. Fortunately, the Gu family had managed to win over Jianghu Laozu, who had been destroyed, and the remaining Yinghe sect adepts to join them. This could be considered to have slightly recovered. However, compared to the spirit martial sect, this little bit of strength was simply incomparable. For a time, the entire Hebei cultivation world was surging. Since the spirit martial sect had already revealed their strength, they decided not to hide it anymore. They actively began to send cultivators to the 5 holy lands, seeking the status of a large sect. As for the other sects and forces, while they were licking the wounds caused by Mara's rampage, they were also secretly forming alliances, preparing to snipe the rise of the spirit martial sect. For a time, the entire North Sea cultivation world was strangely quiet. However, the high-level cultivators of the various sects knew that this was just the last calm before the storm. Tianshan Laozu explained the situation of the entire Hebei cultivation world to Tianfeng Laozu and Tianqing Laozu in the rocky cave. Lu Ping sat at the side and listened. After Liang Tianfeng Laozu finished listening, he nodded and said, "The Immortal Academy is of great importance to our sect. Sooner or later, our sect will be exposed to the cultivation world of the Middle Earth and clash with the local forces. Instead of facing the suppression of the entire Hebei cultivation world led by the spirit martial sect, it would be better to participate in the game of all parties and help the Gu family and other forces to join forces to suppress the spirit martial sect, maintaining the situation of the entire Hebei cultivation world fighting separately and restraining each other." Chu Tianqing Laozu also agreed, "That's right. In this way, with the support of our sect, the Immortal Academy can steadily rise and completely stabilize its foundation in the Hebei cultivation world. When the time comes, our sect will enter the Middle Earth cultivation world in one go. At that time, even if the Hebei cultivation world wants to stop us, it will be too late." Old ancestor Guotianshan nodded his head and said, "Previously, when the Gu family probed us, although we could be considered to have submitted, it also showed that the situation of the Gu family and the other medium-sized forces who wanted to fight against the spirit martial force was not very good. Even the Ying Shan Immortal Academy and the Mountain Universe sect, which could barely be considered small sects, had to join the alliance to fight against the spirit martial force. This meant that the spirit martial force's allies were not weaker than their enemies, and this was our chance. As long as we took this opportunity to muddy the waters even more, it would be best if both sides suffered heavy losses, and only then would we be able to fight for more space for the Immortal Academy to grow." Liang Tianfeng Laozu pondered for a moment and said, "Although this is an opportunity, there is still a risk. Right now, the Immortal Academy is trying to find a way to preserve its strength while not letting the other sects see that we have ulterior motives." Chu Tianqing Laozu said nonchalantly, "The Immortal Academy is just an unranked force right now. Even if we have some ulterior motives, they won't pay attention to us. Guotianshan Laozu thought for a moment and said, "It's best if the Immortal Academy has a Dharma cultivator in charge, but I have to participate in this matter. Otherwise, it will definitely arouse the suspicion of the Gu family. Senior Liang, Junior Chu, who do you think will stay at home?" When Chu Tiancheng Laozu heard this, he hurriedly said, "It's not easy to come out. Who wants to stay behind? Senior Liang, you can just stay in the Immortal Academy." Perfected Liang Shenfeng smiled and said, "The operation this time has to be done in the light and in the dark. The one in the light is Junior Brother Gua, and neither of us can replace him. The one in the dark focuses on sneak attacks and hiding our identities. After Junior Brother Shenin dies, who else in the sect can compare to me?" This, Chu Tiancheng Laozu was dumbfounded, but he could not find a reason to refute. He could only slap his thigh and say, "What bad luck." Lu Ping looked on from the side and found it funny. Unexpectedly, Chu Tiancheng Laozu glared at him and scolded, "What are you laughing at? I heard from Senior Jiang that you have already gathered enough ingredients to make the spirit forging pill. Have you made the spirit forging pill now?" Lu Ping didn't want to bring trouble to himself, so he quickly said, "I've gathered enough spirit herbs to make 2 cauldrons of spirit forging pellets. However, the concoction process for the spirit forging pellets is no small matter, so I haven't started the process yet." Chapter 7:13. Lu Ping looked at Tiancheng Laozu and Tianfeng Laozu in confusion and asked, "Seniors, now that the recipe for the spirit forging pill has been gathered, could it be that with our sect's strength, we are still unable to gather all the herbs needed to refine the spirit forging pill? As for the Thousand Wonder Dew, I believe that with our sect's tens of thousands of years of heritage, we should have at least a few drops." The spirit forging pill itself could only be considered a top-notch half-step Dharma elixir. Although the difficulty of refining it was no lower than that of a Dharma elixir, Junling now had Tianlu Laozu and Tianqin Laozu, 2 Dharma alchemists, as well as the precious cauldron that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had obtained from the Ying Tian training hall. Refining such an elixir was a piece of cake. When Tianqing Laozu and Tianfeng Laozu heard that Lu Ping could actually gather enough herbs for 2 cauldrons of the spirit forging pill, they looked at each other in surprise. Not to mention the rare 3,000-year-old herbs, to be able to gather all the herbs needed for 2 cauldrons of the spirit forging pill, didn't that mean that Lu Ping had at least 2 drops of the Thousand Wonder Dew in his hands? Although the spirit forging pill was a half-step Dharma elixir, the few 3,000-year-old herbs used to refine it were rather precious. Junling had only managed to gather enough herbs for 5 cauldrons of the spirit forging pill, but Lu Ping could gather 2 cauldrons of the Thousand Wonder Dew himself. Tianfeng Laozu suppressed the shock in his heart and handed a jade bottle to Lu Ping. "Take a look at the contents of the bottle first." Lu Ping took the jade bottle with a puzzled look. After opening the bottle, a fragrant scent instantly filled the entire stone room. Lu Ping, who had a good understanding of the spirit forging pill, naturally knew that this was the pill fragrance emitted by the spirit forging pill. It seemed that the sect had already refined the spirit forging pill, but why did Tianfeng Laozu want him to take a look first? Doubts flashed across Lu Ping's mind. Then he exclaimed in surprise. He gently flipped the jade bottle over and a purple pellet appeared in his palm. He held it in front of his eyes and carefully observed it for a moment. Then, a bluish-purple true essence emerged from his palm and wrapped around the pellet. After a short while, the Zhen Yuan in Lu Ping's hand dissipated, and the pill returned to Daoist Tianfeng in the jade essence bottle. "How is it?" Tianfeng Laozu asked Lu Ping as he took the jade essence bottle. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before saying, "Who made this pill? From the way it was refined, there was nothing wrong with it. How come the medicinal effect of the spirit forging pill is only 70% that of a real spirit forging pill?" Tianfeng Laozu nodded his head and said, "The pill you just saw was refined by Master Fornax. Moreover, he used the mountain and river treasured cauldron that Junior Tianlin obtained from the Ying Tian dojo. Regardless of whether it was Master Fornax or Junior Tianqin, they used a top-grade cauldron or a magic treasure cauldron. Although the success rate of the spirit forging pill is different, the medicinal effect is the same. It is only 70% of the 8 spirit forging pills that you obtained from Feiling Mountain. With 2 Grandmasters Laozu working together, the reason why the spirit forging pill's medicinal effect was reduced couldn't be due to the alchemists. It must be known that Lu Ping's current alchemy skills couldn't compare to Tianfeng and Tianqin Laozu. Lu Ping's doubts flashed in his mind. Although he didn't expect this kind of accident to occur, after discovering the reason why the spirit forging pill refined by Tianfeng Laozu had decreased in effectiveness, He immediately thought of another reason. Tianqing Laozu looked at Lu Ping and asked with some eagerness, "How is it, boy? Did you think of the reason?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before saying, "Not yet, but this disciple needs to personally refine it in order to confirm some things." Could it be because of the water refinement? Tianqing Laozu glanced at Tianfeng Laozu beside him, then asked Lu Ping. Lu Ping shook his head and said, "The pills refined by the spirit water refining technique are extremely easy to identify. Among the 8 spirit forging pills obtained from Failing Mountain, there were no traces of the spirit water refining technique. Moreover, although the effects of the spirit water refining technique are good, only one pill can be refined at a time. However, one still needs to prepare a batch of spiritual herbs, which is not worth it for refining the spirit forging pill. Only those pills that are extremely difficult to refine or extremely special will use the spirit water refining technique." Tianqing Laozu was a little disappointed, but Tianfeng Laozu seemed to have already expected that Lu Ping would say this. He smiled and said, "That's good too. We are far inferior to you in terms of alchemy. It just so happens that there is still some time before the Fist Valley space opens. You can use this time to refine a batch of pills and see what the reason is." On the way back to his stone room, Lu Ping was thinking about the situation of the spirit forging pill. His intuition told him that Tianfeng Laozu still had some things to say. Even if Tianfeng Laozu and Tianqin Laozu couldn't refine the spirit forging pill with full effectiveness, these two grandmasters must have some guesses about the reason. However, he didn't know why Tianfeng Laozu didn't tell him and only wanted him to refine a batch of pills first. Could it be that he simply wanted to verify the level of the alchemy skills of Lu Ping and the two Laozu, or was it something else? Lu Ping's thoughts turned and he sat quietly in the stone room for a whole day. Only then did he adjust his state to the best. Then he waved his hand and the Nachuan cauldron turned into a huge cauldron that was half the height of a person and landed in the stone room. Dozens of jade boxes flew out from Lu Ping's sleeves. The spirit sealing talisman on the surface of the jade boxes dimmed one by one. The jade boxes opened, and various well-preserved spiritual herbs flew out of thin air and landed in front of Lu Ping. A few days later, the 3 Laozu came to the rock cave again. Although there was a seal that Lu Ping had set up at the door of the stone room, the fragrance of resentment still penetrated the stone room and filled the entire rock cave. Tianqing Laozu sniffed and fiercely inhaled 2 mouthfuls of the pill fragrance. His face was full of satisfaction. Then he asked Tianshan Laozu, who was beside him, "Senior brother, how effective do you think this kid's spirit forging pill will be?" Tianshan Laozu hesitated for a moment and said, "If Master Fornax and junior sister Qinqin's guess is correct, this kid can really refine a complete spirit forging pill. However, his success rate will definitely not be as high as Master Fornax and junior sisters." Tianqing Laozu smiled and said, "This kid must have a lot of cards up his sleeve. If you don't force him, you will never know what other tricks he has up his sleeve." Tianqing Laozu pondered for a moment and then asked Tianqing Laozu, "Senior brother, why didn't you tell him about Master Fornax and junior sister Qinqin's guess about the spirit forging pill's medicinal properties? Why did you want him to refine the pill first?" Tianfeng Laozu's gaze was deep as he said, "It doesn't matter if I tell him or not. We just need to see the results of his refining." Tianqing Laozu was a little displeased. "Aren't you afraid that this kid will have second thoughts?" Tianfeng Laozu said confidently, "He won't." The reason why the spirit forging elixir was called a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir was because the ratio and quantity of spirit herbs required to refine the elixir was similar to that of a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir. Furthermore, this elixir was only useful for core forging adepts and had no effect on Dharma adepts. However, the actual process of refining the spirit forging pill was even more difficult than that of a normal Dharma stage pill. After a series of preliminary preparations, it was already 3 days later when Lu Ping was ready to ignite the cauldron. After that, he spent another 5 days meticulously refining the pellets. Finally, it was time to condense the pellets. Actually, Lu Ping had his own guesses about why Tianlu and Tianqin Laozu were unable to refine the spirit forging pill. It was just that this guess was related to a secret technique that he had, so he did not want to say it out loud. There were 2 main reasons why Lu Ping had handed over the recipe for the minor forging pill to the sect. Firstly, Lu Ping had a spirit liquid that was better than the dew of vitality. Secondly, it was because of his spirit fire smelting purification technique. The small spirit forging pellet was originally an imitation of the spirit forging pellet, so it was closely related to the spirit forging pellet itself. However, the small spirit forging pellet only had a quarter of the medicinal effect of the spirit forging pellet. But after Lu Ping's purification technique, the medicinal effect of the small spirit forging pellet was increased to a third or even more of the medicinal effect of the spirit forging pellet. This made Lu Ping suspect that this purification technique was originally a common inheritance of Fei Ling sect, be it in alchemy or smithing. It was precisely because of this set of purification technique that Lu Ping obtained from a secret chamber in the ruins of Fei Ling Mountain's pavilion of smithing that allowed Lu Ping to refine spirit herbs and medicinal liquids with twice the effort and half the result during the alchemy process. It could be said that Lu Ping's rapid progress in alchemy was largely due to this set of purification technique that allowed him to improve his alchemy skills so quickly. Lu Ping speculated that the spirit forging pellets concocted by Zhen Ling sect were only 70% as effective as the original spirit forging pellets. This was most likely because the spirit forging pellets were originally from Fei Ling sect's secret art, the spirit fire smelting purification technique. Currently he only had 3/4 of the Wonder Jade Dew in his hand, which was a total of 27 drops. Presumably, this drop of Wonder Jade Dew should be enough for the 4 remaining pills to be refined. The spirit chi in the pill furnace suddenly became somewhat chaotic, and Lu Ping's divine sense couldn't control it for a moment. He sighed inwardly. This spirit forging pill was indeed difficult to refine. The spirit chi in the pill furnace suddenly became somewhat chaotic, and his divine sense couldn't control it for a moment. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. This spirit forging pill was indeed difficult to refine. A jade bottle appeared in his hand, and Lu Ping hurriedly dripped a drop of purple crystal royal bee jelly into the pill furnace. When the 3rd drop of royal bee jelly appeared, the 4th pill suddenly turned into pure spirit chi and evaporated. After another moment, Lu Ping's eyes narrowed, and he reached out to pat the pill furnace. The pill furnace suddenly issued a distant roar, and the lid of the furnace rose into the air. 3 purple pills suddenly jumped out of the pill furnace and scattered in all directions in the stone room. Outside the stone room, Tianshan Laozu and the others heard the roar of the pill furnace, and their expressions were also shocked. The pills are formed. Inside the stone room, Lu Ping looked at the 3 spirit forging pills in the jade essence bottle, and he felt quite conflicted. It seemed that it was really because of the purification secret technique. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. Could it be that he really had to teach this secret technique to the sect? The restriction at the door of the stone room gradually melted, and Lu Ping walked out of the stone room with a face full of joy and doubt. Tianqing Laozu was impatient and he hurriedly asked, "How is it?" Lu Ping handed the jade essence bottle to Tianqing Laozu, and Laozu hurriedly opened the bottle to check. After a moment he exclaimed, "It's done. It's 100% spirit forging pill, and there's no loss of medicinal efficacy." Chapter 7:14. Tianqing Laozu's exclamation made Laozu and Tianshan Laozu happy. The 3 of them carefully examined the 3 spirit forging pills that Lu Ping had refined. After a while, Tianfeng Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "It really is a 100% spirit forging pill, there is not a single loss of medicinal efficacy. Nephew Lu, how did you do it?" Tianqing Laozu and Tianshan Laozu both looked at Lu Ping, but Lu Ping replied, "Disciple refined the spirit forging pill according to the recipe, there is no difference." Martial Uncle, does Master Qianlu and Martial Uncle Tianqin have any suspicions about this? Lu Ping threw the question back at them. Tianshan Laozu and Tianqing Laozu both looked at him. Tianfeng Laozu smiled and said, "It seems that Master Qianlu and Martial Sister Tianqin have guessed correctly. This spirit forging pill may have something to do with the water attribute cultivation method of your world." When Lu Ping heard that he didn't suspect anything else, he felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. But when he heard Tianfeng Laozu's and Tianqin's guesses, Lu Ping's expression froze. Tianfeng Laozu saw Lu Ping's expression and smiled. "What, you also thought of it?" When Martial Sister Tianqin heard that you knew the spirit water refining technique, she said that you might be able to refine the spirit forging pill. Master Qianlu thought that if you used the spirit water refining technique to refine the spirit forging pill, you would be able to refine a complete pill. But in terms of the various preparations needed to refine the spirit forging pill, it wouldn't be worth it. Lu Ping was originally conflicted about whether or not he should give the spirit forging technique to the sect. He didn't think that Tianfeng Laozu and the others didn't suspect that Lu Ping was hiding something, but that it was because of his water attribute cultivation method. Lu Ping's conflicted thoughts disappeared and his expression brightened. But in the eyes of Tianfeng Laozu and the others, Lu Ping also understood the reason, so he continued, You should also know that the spirit forging pill refined by the spirit fire pill furnace will have some smoke and fire aura. Master Qinlu once carefully examined the spirit forging pill you brought back from Fei Ling Island, and there was indeed smoke and fire aura. This means that the spirit forging pill was definitely not refined using the spirit water refining technique. However, the smoke and fire aura in the spirit forging pill was extremely weak, so weak that most alchemy grandmasters can't do it. Therefore, Master Qinlu suspected that the person who could refine the complete spirit forging pill must be someone like you, who cultivated a water attribute cultivation method, but somehow became a genius in alchemy. Only in this way, during the process of refining the pill, can your water attribute True Yuan offset the smoke and fire aura in the pill to the greatest extent. Tianfeng Laozu's words caused Lu Ping to sink into deep thought. He originally thought that the spirit forging pill was not effective because of the spirit forging technique, but now it seemed that the purification technique was only one of the reasons, and the attribute of his own cultivation method was another. And Qianlu Laozu and Tianqin Laozu didn't suspect him, they just wanted to verify their own conjectures through him, but they didn't expect Lu Ping to have the heart of a villain. Lu Ping smiled bitterly as he shook his head. His own alchemy skills would eventually be passed down in Jinling, and the spirit forging technique would definitely not be kept a secret by Lu Ping. However, he felt that now was not the right time. Moreover, even if Lu Ping wanted to pass down these things, he could only pass them on to his own disciples. It was impossible for him to tell the other alchemists in the Pill Pavilion. Lu Ping suddenly remembered that there were still 3 Laozus in front of him, and it was extremely inappropriate for him to be in such a daze. When he looked up, the 3 Laozus had already left the cave, and the 3 newly refined spirit forging pills had already been taken by them. Lu Ping helplessly smiled bitterly. Tianfeng Laozu's meaning was very clear. From now on, the sect's spirit forging pills would be entrusted to him alone to refine. Although the spirit forging pill was heaven-defying, it also had many restrictions. For example, the spiritual herbs required to refine it were extremely rare, and the 10,000 Wonder Dew was even rarer. Moreover, it was limited to 3 pills, and there were also restrictions on the quality of the refined spiritual objects. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed and Lu Ping had concocted another 4 cauldrons of spirit forging pellets. Other than the cauldron he had concocted before and the cauldron he had prepared himself, Ancestor Tianfeng had also brought 3 cauldrons of spirit herbs and 3 drops of myriad wonder dew from Zhenling's sect. Zhenling's sect had prepared 5 cauldrons of spirit herbs for the spirit forging pellets. The first 2 cauldrons were used by Sky Cauldron Ancestor and Sky Zither Ancestor respectively. But when the 2 discovered that their spirit forging pellets were lacking in medicinal efficacy, they decisively gave up on the task. Instead, they asked enlightened Master Tianfeng to bring the remaining 3 cauldrons of spirit herbs to Lu Ping. Lu Ping had refined 4 batches of spirit forging pills in a row. With the help of the amethyst royal jelly and the spirit explosion technique, he barely managed to maintain a success rate between 30% and 40%. In addition to the 3 spirit forging pills he had refined in the first batch, he had refined a total of 17 spirit forging pills. 11 of them were given to Tianfeng Laozu and the other 2, while Lu Ping kept 6 for himself. The Fist Valley space was about to reopen, and Lu Ping had used up all the spiritual herbs he had for the spirit forging pills. Thus he once again headed downstream. In the Fist Valley's grotto heaven, the 3 Yingshan Immortal Academy 3rd layer blood condensation realm disciples were all injured and looked to be in a sorry state. 3 fist-sized bees with purple crystal heads were flying around the 3 of them while buzzing. At the feet of the 3 were 4 cultivators who were already dead. From their clothes, it was clear that they were cultivators from the Gu family. Clearly, the additional cultivators had gotten into a conflict with the 3 Yingshan Immortal Academy cultivators, but in the end, the Yingshan Immortal Academy disciples emerged victorious. An Immortal Academy disciple whose head wasn't that large, but whose body was extremely fat kicked the Gu family cultivator next to him, saying, "Pa, you even wanted to follow this old one to set up an ambush, not knowing that we already noticed you all a long time ago. However, senior son, your strength has increased again, actually using just a few moves to remove that person's head." A cultivator who wasn't tall but was obviously the leader frowned and said, "Junior brother Qian, stop fooling around. If it wasn't for Elder Xianping's 3 3rd layer blood condensation realm bees and the talisman given by Elder Xianping, who knows how much effort it would take for us to kill these 4 people. Let's bury these people's corpses first. There are only a few days left before the Fist Valley space closes. We can't fail miserably during this time and allow the other 2 sects cultivators to track us using the corpses on the ground." Another Immortal Academy disciple who was about 18 or 19 years old, collected the four people's storage pouches and laughed. Haha, senior brother Sun, senior brother Chen, these four people really have a lot of good stuff on them. In total, there are more than 3,000 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 7 to 800,000-year-old spiritual herbs. It seems that other than collecting the spiritual herbs themselves, these four people have probably killed and robbed quite a bit. Junior brother Chen, who had just stomped on the ground and created a 3-meter-wide pit, was overjoyed. So much. Sigh, if it wasn't for the fact that we followed Elder Xianping's team's map to check a few places, the three of us might have gained more than them. Senior brother Sun, who was the leader, said unhappily, Junior brother Chen, junior brother Zhou, Elder Xianping's matter is more important. Even if we don't gain anything this time, we still have to complete Elder Xianping's orders. Junior brother Chen laughed and said, Of course, of course. The four of them divided the spiritual herbs and took a few mid-grade magical artifacts according to their needs. However, they suddenly heard the buzzing sound of the three demonic bees suddenly become much louder. The three of them stared blankly for a moment, then became happy. Junior brother Chen said, Could it be that the demonic bees have discovered something? Senior brother Sun's face also showed a trace of joy as he said, According to the secret map that Elder Xianping gave us, there should be a secret spirit herb garden here. The places that we had been to before were either wastelands or were cut off by spatial cracks. We have been searching for more than 2 months, but we have found very little. Now that the demonic bees are flying around, it is obvious that they have found something. Junior brother Zhou also said excitedly, Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and let go of the demonic bees, then we'll follow them to find the spiritual herb garden. The three of them followed the route the three demonic bees took, carefully avoiding several spatial cracks. Suddenly their eyes lit up. The three of them looked at the scene in front of them, and their faces immediately became sluggish. Junior brother Chen raised his trembling hand and pointed in front of him. He said, This is a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb garden? Senior brother Sun immediately reacted. He could not hide the excitement on his face. He said, What are we waiting for? Let's first release the blood-refining realm demonic bee swarm that Elder Xianping gave us, then we'll harvest everything here. But don't forget to leave a portion of the spiritual herb seeds behind. In another corner of the spatial crack, Jianghu hurriedly flew forward. This spatial crack also prohibited cultivators from flying, so all cultivators could only walk on the ground. Yingshan Immortal Academy's disciple in front, Stop. Where can you run to? A Mountain Universe Sect's Level 3 Blood Condensation Realm cultivator chased closely behind Tianyu, while the other two cultivators flanked him from both sides. Gradually they forced Tianyu into a corner of a spatial crack. Tianyu had nowhere to run, so he turned around and faced the three cultivators in front of him. He was originally a Level 6 Blood Condensation Realm cultivator, but now that his cultivation was sealed, he was chased for hundreds of kilometers by these three. In the end he still could not escape. If he could survive this, he would definitely cultivate a few powerful spells and divine abilities when he returned to the Immortal Academy. Tianyu's expression was filled with regret. He was only interested in alchemy. Although he had observed Taoist Xianping practicing the sword before, he did not put all of his attention on sword techniques like Wang Qi. He only practiced occasionally when he thought of it. Even so, if not for the few sword techniques that Lu Ping did not forget, Tianyu would have been surrounded and killed by the three cultivators today. Brat, your luck is not bad. Someone actually found a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb garden in that kind of place. You don't need the three of us to teach you what to do, right? The leader of the group looked at the cultivator in front of him mockingly. Seventh senior brother, although this guy's strength is ordinary, his sword techniques are very strange. Be careful not to fail miserably. Tianyu silently took out a mid-grade flying sword. He had already made up his mind. If he could not withstand the three cultivators' attacks, he would break the seal on his cultivation. That way the surrounding space would not be able to withstand the pressure of a mid-stage blood condensation realm cultivator, and it would collapse. He would not be able to escape death, and the three cultivators in front of him would be buried with him. Tianyu already knew that since Taoist Xianping was so cautious in placing these secret maps, there must be a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb garden in them. Such a secret must not be known by the cultivators from the other two sections. Chapter 7:15. After Du Jialua entered the Fist Valley, De Bao rolled out from his sleeve. Du Jialua looked at Debao, who was sniffing the ground as if searching for something. He asked cautiously, "Jinren Debao, what should we do?" Lu Ping used a secret technique to forcibly seal Debao's cultivation from the second level of the core forging realm to the third level of the blood condensation realm. This powerful sealing technique was something Lu Ping learned from his teacher, Laozu. However, the price to pay for it was also very expensive. After the seal was removed, Debao's cultivation would return to the first level of the core forging realm. Although Debao was willing to go to all kinds of forbidden and dangerous places to search for all kinds of treasures, he was naturally unwilling to let his cultivation drop by one level. However, Lu Ping told Debao that if he still wanted to have a chance of advancing to the Transcendence realm in the future, it would be best for him to reduce his cultivation to the first level of the core forging realm. Debao was originally the lowest level spirit-seeking mouse in the cultivation world. He had relied on Lu Ping's continuous supply of elixirs to increase his cultivation to his current level. His own foundation was extremely weak. If Debao didn't consolidate his cultivation, even if Lu Ping continued to supply Debao with elixirs, it would be impossible for him to advance to the Transcendence realm. Although Debao's cultivation was sealed, and he could only move around in his original form with the strength of the third level of the blood condensation realm, he could still speak. When he heard Lu Ping's question, he raised his head and looked at Du Jialua. He chuckled and said, "Of course I have to do some private work. Just follow me." In more than 2 months, under Debao's lead, Du Jialua found 7 to 8 spiritual herb gardens in the Fist Valley. The number of 500-year-old spiritual herbs he collected reached 2,000, and he even found nearly 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Such an achievement made Du Jialua overjoyed. However, Debao became more and more unhappy. He didn't care about these things that were below 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Other than his love for treasure hunting, the biggest reason he entered the Fist Valley this time was because Lu Ping learned from the memory of the pure Yang soul that this space was used as an important spiritual herb base by the Ying Tian sect. In the depths of the space, there were houses built by the disciples sent by the Ying Tian sect to watch over and cultivate the spiritual herbs. However, as Debao followed the paths Lu Ping drew for him, he kept running into spatial cracks, and other obstacles. In the end, he had no choice but to change his route. Fortunately, although these routes were blocked, the places along the way happened to be densely packed with spiritual herb gardens that the Ying Tian sect opened. Du Jialua took the opportunity to gain quite a lot. This time, seeing that the space was about to close, Debao had already tried to follow the last route to see if he could enter the depths of the space. Not only were there houses built by the Ying Tian sect disciples, but the place where the houses were built was also where the spiritual vein of the entire space was located. The places that were closer to the spiritual vein were naturally densely packed with 3,000-year-old spiritual herb gardens. At this moment, Debao's body, which was rolling forward rapidly like a meatball, suddenly stopped. Du Jialua, who was chasing closely behind, took the opportunity to let out a breath. Just when he was about to speak, he heard Debao whisper, "Be quiet." Hearing this, Du Jialua hurriedly restrained his aura and focused his voice. At the same time, he threw Debao to his mid-grade magic tool. Du Jialua had encountered similar situations a few times before. With Debao's talent, they had avoided many cultivators from other sections. Debao's nose twitched rapidly. A moment later, a sliver of surprise flashed across his eyes. He turned around and said to Du Jialua, "There seems to be a fellow disciple of yours being surrounded and attacked by 3 people in front. The situation doesn't look good." Du Jialua's expression became anxious. Enlightened Debao, "Let's go and help him." Debao glanced at Du Jialua and said, "We must help him, but it depends on how we help him. If we go up like this, a first-layer blood condensation realm miner repairs and a third-layer blood condensation realm rat demon can't do anything." Tianyu's current situation was very bad. He was surrounded by 3 third-layer blood condensation realm mountain sect disciples. He wasn't good at fighting and his cultivation was sealed. How could he fight against the 3 of them? Fortunately, Tianyu had a third-layer blood condensation realm wasp with him. Even though the wasp was weaker than him, it became a great help to him. Tianyu was like a crazed tiger. He was fighting with his life on the line. If the other 3 weren't confident in their victory, Tianyu would have been killed a long time ago. Tianyu casually touched his waist and swallowed a vitality replenishing pill. It turned into a warm current that was absorbed and transformed by his bloodline, nourishing the magic power in his bloodline that was drying up. How many pills does this brat have on him? Isn't he afraid of the medicinal toxins accumulating in his body and killing him? One of the mountain sect disciples cursed as he defended against Tianyu's frenzied attacks. Could this guy be an alchemist? I think he's a spoiled brat. He has a lot of good stuff on him, but his skills are lacking. Not necessarily. His sword techniques are very exquisite, but he looks like he hasn't practiced them for a long time. Why does he look so awkward? He's learned to protect himself to this extent. He deserves to die in our hands today. Everyone put in more effort. Whether he's an alchemist or a spoiled brat, all the good stuff on him will belong to us after he dies. The greed in the three's eyes intensified. They no longer fought with Tianyu. The three of them attacked together, and a few more wounds appeared on Tianyu's body. Tianyu only had a sliver of consciousness left. If he could no longer defend against the three's attacks, he would unseal his cultivation. When that happened, he would perish together with the three of them. Right at this moment, a strange spiritual energy suddenly exploded under everyone's feet. The three people who were attacking Tianyu suddenly felt their bodies sink, as if they were carrying a heavy pressure on their backs. Their previously nimble movements suddenly became difficult to move. Not good. Someone's ambushing us. Who is it? Show yourself. The three of them circulated the magic power in their bodies to push away the huge force that was pressing down on them. Tianyu, who had already given up all hope, suddenly became spirited. He used a sword technique and slashed a half-foot-long wound on a Mountain Universe sect disciple's body. Although the attack of this strange power disrupted the rhythm of the three people's attacks, after the three of them circulated their magic power, they were still able to resist this kind of magic. However, just as the three of them had shaken off the huge force, before they could even react, a figure was already rushing towards them. At the same time, an iron hammer magic artifact flew out of his hand, transforming into a giant hammer that was half a zhang in size in the air. Then it fiercely smashed towards one of the Mountain Universe sect disciples. So it's another Yingshan Immortal Academy disciple who's seeking death. He's only at the first stage of the blood condensation realm. He's simply courting death. Seeing that Du Jialua was attacking him, the Mountain Universe sect disciple hurriedly used all his strength. However, he still had a ferocious expression on his face as he raised the magic weapon in his hand and counterattacked Du Jialua. The Mountain Universe sect disciple instantly felt a huge force descending from the sky. His body was fiercely nailed into the ground by half a foot, and his magic power almost dissipated. The giant hammer returned, and the flying figure only paused for a moment before launching another attack at him. This time, the Mountain Universe sect disciple didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. He focused 120% of his attention and tried to reverse the passive effect of the hammer strike. Just as Du Jialua rushed over and launched a sneak attack on one of the Mountain Universe sect disciples, the other Mountain Universe sect disciple saw that Du Jialua's hammer strike had caused his companion to suffer. He wanted to deal with this first stage blood condensation realm minor repairs first. However, before he could make a move, more than 10 talismans suddenly appeared in front of him. Fireballs, frost arrows, blood-sucking vines, golden light thorns, meteor techniques, and more than 10 other spells flew towards him. The power of each talisman was equivalent to an attack from an early-stage blood condensation cultivator. In an instant, the Mountain Universe sect disciple's soul was shattered. Fortunately, this Mountain Universe sect disciple wasn't a weakling. He wielded a spear magic weapon and shot out dozens of spear shadows, destroying the spells one by one. However, before he could even catch his breath, another 10 talismans flew towards him. The Mountain Universe sect disciple cursed at this wastrel. He felt so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. The Mountain Universe sect disciple tried to dodge, but just as he took a step forward, the ground beneath his feet suddenly collapsed. The Mountain Universe sect disciple cursed inwardly. Just as he was about to use his magic power to stabilize himself, the pressure on everyone suddenly increased. The Mountain Universe sect disciple staggered and fell into the pit. 2 pill-like beads were suddenly thrown out from the ground. Then, under the Mountain Universe sect disciple's confused gaze, the beads suddenly exploded into 2 sharp sword chi that sliced towards the Mountain Universe sect disciple's neck. What kind of strange spell was this? The Mountain Universe sect disciple wasn't a weakling. He shook the spear in his hand and destroyed one of the sword chi. However, his legs tightened, and it was too late for him to dodge the other sword chi. He could only try his best to avoid being hit in his vital organs, and one of his arms fell off his body. The Mountain Universe sect disciple knew that he couldn't escape. He used his magic power to break free from the shackles on his legs and tried to escape. However, he didn't have the chance to escape. Another pill flew towards him. This one was different from the previous 2 pills. This one suddenly exploded. It was a ball of black flames. The Mountain Universe sect disciple's face changed when the blood dripping from his shoulder was burned by the black flames. But before he could scream, his entire body suddenly turned black and turned into ashes in the flames. Debeo crawled out from the ground. He really had foresight. He made up his mind to collect everything that Lu Ping had thrown away. At the very least, these talismans and intentional battle pills that Lu Ping had been using for practice would be put to good use. However, he didn't think about it. He was a core forging stage beast cultivator. If he undid the seal, then even if hundreds of these things were thrown at him, they wouldn't be able to harm a single hair on his body. Seeing Debeo easily finish off his opponent, the other 2 Mountain Universe sect cultivators were shocked and they wanted to run away. At this time, how could Tianyu let go? Du Jialua was also doing his best to entangle his opponent with the help of a monster wasp. Debeo's rat eyes flashed with a trace of craftiness and he dove into the ground. It was unknown where he went. The 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples suddenly panicked. They were immediately distracted by Debeo, who could appear at any time. Tianyu and Du Jialua's spirits rose and their attacks became sharper. The 2 of them became more and more skilled. Chapter 7:16. Lu Deguai transformed into his original form and carried Lu Ping along the Ying River towards the Fist Valley's space. Although the Ying River had many twists and turns in the Ying mountain range, Lu Ping could greatly reduce the time and distance if he flew. However, Lu Ping was naturally fond of water and would rather carry Lu Deguai downstream. When Lu Ping arrived at the entrance of the Fist Valley space, perfected Gu Hun and perfected Jian Ming had already returned. However, the person who came from the Mountain Universe sect was not Pang Feiyun, but another late-stage core forging realm cultivator. When Lu Ping arrived, this cultivator looked at Lu Ping carefully. Lu Ping followed the gaze of the person but did not take it to heart. In the Fist Valley space, although Du Jialua was only at the first stage of the blood condensation realm, he appeared to be quite calm when fighting against the Mountain Universe sect's 3rd stage blood condensation realm disciple. Several times, the cultivators from Mountain Universe Order had attempted to snatch the initiative from Du Jialua. However, Du Jialua was able to accurately control his attacks and defenses, allowing him to firmly suppress the cultivators from Mountain Universe Order. However, one of the main reasons why Du Jialua was able to suppress the Mountain Universe sect's cultivators was because the gravity technique that Debeo had cast on them was still working. Compared to Du Jialua, Tianyu's situation seemed to be better. After all, Tianyu was a mid-stage blood condensation realm cultivator with his cultivation sealed. Although he was not good at fighting, after fighting for a while, Tianyu's sword technique seemed much sharper. However, when Debeo made his move, he still helped Tianyu first. After dealing with Tianyu's opponent, the 2 of them turned around to deal with the last Mountain Universe sect's cultivator who was planning to escape. After collecting the spiritual herbs from the 3 Mountain Universe sect's cultivators, Tianyu handed all the mid-grade magic tools they used to Du Jialua. Du Jialua wanted to decline, but Debeo smiled and said, "He might not be strong, but he is still a mid-blood condensation realm cultivator. He has always had good magic tools. You can keep these magic tools for yourself. He has better ones." Du Jialua was still hesitating, but Tianyu had already smiled and said, "I am an alchemist. I originally did not need these things. Junior brother, feel free to take them." Debeo rummaged through the storage artifact under his neck for a long time and finally took out a jade bottle. He took out a pill and threw it to Tianyu. "This is the poison cleansing pill that boss refined back then. It's the most suitable for someone like you who swallowed a large number of pills in a short period of time, resulting in the accumulation of pill toxins." From Du Jialua's point of view, this senior brother in front of him seemed to be very familiar with perfected Debeo. He directly swallowed the pill that perfected Debeo handed to him and started refining it. Although Debeo knew that these 2 people in front of him were people that Lu Ping valued and there was a high chance that they would become Lu Ping's disciples in the future, Lu Ping did not say anything about the matter. Debeo also did not know what Lu Ping's rules were. Hence, Debeo did not mention these things at all. The 3 of them continued to recover their magic power. Tianyu also wanted to use this opportunity to recover from his injuries. In the blink of an eye, 6 hours passed. Debeo and Du Jialua had already recovered. Tianyu, on the other hand, was still circulating his cultivation technique to treat his internal injuries. This was especially so because he had swallowed a large number of pills that he did not have time to refine in time. As a result, a lot of pill toxins had accumulated in his body. Fortunately, Perfected Debao had collected the blood condensation realm pills that Lu Ping had refined in the past. Now it came in handy. Tianyu's face changed from green to white. A moment later, a surge of blood energy suddenly rushed into his body. Tianyu's eyes suddenly opened and he swallowed a mouthful of dirty blood. Tianyu's face was still pale, but his spirit was much better than before. Debao nodded his head slightly and said, "The pill toxins have been forced out. Although your injuries have not fully recovered, at least it will not hinder your cultivation in the future." The two of them followed behind Debao, moving along the edge of the spatial cracks. After an unknown period of time, Debao finally stopped and said, "All right, it should be here. Let's hope that we can directly reach the deepest part of the spatial crack this time." Tianyu hesitated for a moment and said, "Perfected Debao, where are we going? Did Uncle Master Shenping give us any orders?" Perfected Debao rolled his eyes. It was unknown how his rat eyes could roll so much. He said, "Of course it's boss's orders. Otherwise, why would I, Lu Debao, a dignified core forging realm beast cultivator, pay such a huge price and take such a big risk to come to this place? Alright, don't ask any more. This place is full of dangers. Follow me closely and pass through the cracks in the spatial crack. If we can reach our destination, we will naturally understand the mission this time." In an area surrounded by spatial cracks, 3 Immortal Academy disciples carefully gathered a patch of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs and placed them into the spirit sealing boxes that Lu Ping gave them. These 3 were the only Immortal Academy disciples who had reached the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm. After placing the last 3,000-year-old spirit herb into his spirit sealing box, Junior Brother Chen hurriedly stood up and stretched. He said, "We're finally done. Senior Brother Son, do you think we suffered a loss this time? It's been 3 whole months, but we only found 2 spirit herb gardens hidden in the spatial cracks. There are only a few hundred spirit herbs in total, and we were almost ambushed by a group of Gu clan cultivators." Before Senior Brother Son could speak, Junior Brother Zhou spoke first. "Suffered a loss? This is a 3,000-year-old spirit herb. If we were to exchange it with a 1,000-year-old spirit herb, it would be worth 10 times. Our few hundred 3,000-year-old spirit herbs are worth close to 10,000 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, let alone 500-year-old spirit herbs." Junior Brother Chen laughed and said, "Ha, that's true, that's true. I just feel that it's a pity. We spent more than 2 months searching for the 7 secret locations that Sage Shenping gave us, but only 2 of them exist. The others have all been sealed by the spatial cracks. If the other 5 were not sealed by the spatial cracks, then our harvest would be really great." Junior Brother Zhou curled his lips. On the surface, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this greedy guy, but his heart was filled with regret like Junior Brother Chen. He looked at Senior Brother Son beside him and saw that he was thinking about something with his head lowered. He asked curiously, "Senior Brother Son, what are you thinking about?" Senior Brother Son said in a low voice, "You said that the disciples of Ying He, Ying Shan, and Dao space sects had entered this space at least 8 times, if not 10 times. How come they didn't discover these spirit herb gardens hidden between the spatial cracks? Daoist Shenping had never entered it, so how could he give each of us a map of this space, and even have 7 hidden secret places?" Junior Brother Chen raised his eyebrows and said, "Isn't that obvious? The depths of these 2 secret places are so dangerous. If we didn't have Elder Schwamping's map in our hands, how would we dare to enter the depths of the spatial cracks?" Senior Brother Son nodded and said, "Junior Brother Chen is right. But the key question is, how did Elder Shenping know the situation in this space so clearly?" Junior Martial Brother Chen and Junior Martial Brother Zhou looked at each other. After a long while, Junior Martial Brother Zhou said, "How can we know about these things? Elder Shenping has remarkable abilities. His means are not something we can estimate." Senior Brother Son raised his head expectantly and said, "That's true. But Junior Brothers, do you remember what Elder Shenping said before? If we come out of this space unscathed, he has a way to help all of us advance to the 4th layer of the blood condensation realm. Once we reach the 4th layer, we will be able to worship a core forging cultivator from the Immortal Academy as our master." Junior Brother Chen swallowed and said, "Senior Brother Son, it can't be, you want to become Elder Schwamping's disciple?" Senior Brother Son stared blankly for a moment, and only then did he say with a bitter smile, "I do want to, but that would still require Elder Shenping's favor. However, I heard an immortal elder from our Immortal Academy inadvertently say that Elder Shenping indeed hasn't accepted any disciples, because there has never been anyone who could enter his elder's eyes." Junior Brother Zhou was puzzled and asked, Then what do you mean, senior brother? Senior brother's son said, I heard some news from the Immortal Academy. Normally, when a cultivator reaches the mid-blood condensation realm, they will have the qualifications to become a core forging enlightened master's disciple, but they will only become an in-name disciple. However, if they are talented and want to improve themselves, or if they have some special talent, they can directly become a core forging enlightened master's personal disciple. In the future, they might even inherit the enlightened master's legacy and become his direct disciple. Senior brother Sun looked at junior brother Qian and junior brother Zhou and said, I'm telling you this because the three of us have the highest achievements among this batch of Immortal Academy disciples. If we want to advance to the mid-blood condensation realm, we would rather not have a master for now. We have to think carefully about who we want to be under. Of course, it would be best if we can become a personal disciple in one go. That way, our achievements in the future will be even higher. Du Jialua and Tianyu followed behind De Bao, making many turns and twists. They avoided the spatial cracks that could easily devour or cut them in half. When the two of them started to feel dizzy, they finally saw De Bao stop in front of them. When the two of them looked up, the scene in front of them left them dumbfounded. Fortunately, De Bao had seen more shocking scenes with Lu Ping. Even though the scene here also made De Bao gasp in surprise, he immediately turned around and said to the two of them, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and release the bee swarm that boss gave you. Tianyu quickly released the 50 blood refining realm amethyst bees. Du Jialua did not have the bee swarm that Lu Ping gave him. Seeing that Tianyu released the level 3 blood condensation realm amethyst bee, Du Jialua also released his own. De Bao looked at the dozens of demonic bees, then looked at the large spiritual herb garden in front of him. Then he took out a spirit beast bag out of nowhere and shook it with all his might. Nearly 100 blood refining realm amethyst bees were shaken out. When they saw the spiritual herb garden in front of them, they really swarmed towards the spiritual herb garden. Du Jialua and Tianyu also walked towards the spiritual herb garden. De Bao stopped them and said, Hey, where are you two going? The two of them stopped and looked back in confusion. Gathering spiritual herbs. Who knows when we will finish gathering such a large spiritual herb garden? There's not much time left before the Fist Valley space closes. Follow me to another place first. Chapter 717. After passing through the vast spiritual herb garden, a row of wooden houses surrounded by fences appeared in front of everyone. When Du Jialua and Tianyu saw the wooden house, they felt an inexplicable sense of excitement. As cultivators, the two of them had never had the experience of exploring the ruins before. There was no need to talk about Du Jialua. He had only cultivated for a short period of time, always staying in Immortal Academy, so he didn't have much experience. Meanwhile, Tianyu's strength was meager to begin with, and pill refinement was a noble profession to begin with, so there was no need for him to risk his life to explore all types of dangerous historical remains. Therefore, when the two of them saw an ordinary house that looked like a wooden hut, their excitement was immediately aroused. This house was clearly built by the Surplus Heavens sect to manage the spirit herb garden in this space. How could a cultivator who could manage such a large spirit herb garden be ordinary? On the other hand, even if the cultivators who managed this spiritual herb garden were just a few unknown core forging cultivators, if they really left anything behind, it would be a huge fortune for blood condensation realm minor repairs cultivators like Du Jialua and Tianyu. The temptation of the wooden house made the two of them lose their vigilance. Du Jialua wanted to move forward, but he suddenly felt as if he was carrying a huge mountain on his back. Du Jialua looked back in surprise, only to see that De Bao had stopped on the ground at some point. He said, Don't go in yet. When Du Jialua heard this, he immediately came to a realization. He was startled. Tianyu, who was beside him, also hurriedly stopped when he heard this. De Bao waved his paw on the ground, and a small stone shot into the fence with a whistling sound. Suddenly, an invisible barrier appeared around the fence. The small stone hit the barrier, and ripples immediately appeared around the barrier. However, the small stone suddenly shattered into powder before it hit the ground. Hiss. Tianyu and Du Jialua immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Fortunately, the two of them had been stopped by De Bao earlier. If they had charged head-on like that, given their cultivations, they definitely would not have been able to dodge the rebound of the invisible barrier. This is an array formation? Tianyu was more knowledgeable than Du Jialua, so he asked De Bao, who was on the ground. De Bao's expression was a little solemn as he said, It is indeed a formation, and it has been operating for 4,000 years. It is obvious that this place is supported by a spirit vein, and from the looks of it, the grade of the spirit vein is above a mid-grade spirit vein. Tianyu and Du Jialua knew about spirit veins. When Yingshan Immortal Academy was first established, there was only one spirit vein. 10 years later, after Heavenly Mountain Laozu perfected Lu Xinyuan, and the others worked hard to manage it, Yingshan Immortal Academy gained another 6 small-sized spirit veins. As for Heavenly Mountain Laozu, he did not open his sect to the masses. Instead, he took the path of elite disciples. Actually, the restriction of the mountain range's spirit veins was also an important reason. Debao suddenly stood up and waved his 2 front paws as if he was making some sort of hand sign. Then, as if he was using his 2 hind legs to support his fat body, he seemed to be unable to do so, and suddenly fell back to the ground. Just as Du Jialua and Tianyu were feeling a little confused, they saw 5 purple crystal wasps split off from the swarm of wasps that were circling behind them to collect nectar. They flew in different directions of the wooden house. Seeing that the purple crystal wasps were about to hit the invisible barrier, Du Jialua hurriedly said, "Perfected Debao, these are demon soldiers that Elder Xianping nurtured." Just as Du Jialua finished speaking, he saw 4 of the 5 purple crystal wasps that were flying in different directions explode when they touched the invisible barrier, while the remaining one was only bounced back. The purple crystal wasps flapped their wings and flew forward again, only to be bounced back a second time. They circled for a moment before flying back to the spiritual grass at the back. Debao chuckled and said, "We don't have any formation masters among us. If we want to find an entry point, it's impossible to use lifeless stones. In that case we can only use demonic wasps. Do we have to do it ourselves?" Debao pretended to be a senior and spoke seriously, but he rolled his eyes again in his heart. Boss has at least 8,000 purple crystal wasps, if not 10,000. A few blood-refining wasps don't even have purple crystals on them. If they die, they die. As long as that little girl Zilan is here, the swarm will be replenished very soon. Boss won't care about this. The 3 of them looked in the direction where the purple crystal wasps had flown and saw that it was the fence at the entrance of the fence. Looks like this is the entrance to the magic array. Back then, the cultivator inside the house was in a hurry to leave. Thus, he did not activate the magic array protecting the house. Instead, he had casually set up a restrictive array at the entrance, Chen Feng thought. Du Jialua and Tianyu were greatly impressed by Debao's words. As expected of a spirit pet that had followed Elder Xianping for many years, this level of knowledge was far beyond what the 2 of them could hope to match. Let's join forces and attack this restriction. Let's see if we can break it. Debao casually pulled out a mid-grade magic artifact from his storage magic artifact. Tianyu was using a mid-grade flying sword while Du Jialua was using a mid-grade magic artifact. It was the giant hammer from earlier. Du Jialua was originally only at the first layer of the blood condensation realm. However, when he first activated his bloodline and started cultivating, he had received guidance from Lu Ping several times. After he advanced to the blood condensation realm, he also received the inheritance of Ying Tian sect's Fei Tian Laozu from Lu Ping. His strength was quite extraordinary. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to tangle with a 3rd-layer blood condensation realm disciple from the Mountain Universe sect. The combined attack of the 3 mid-grade magic tools bounced back. The restriction light barrier at the entrance of the fence only shook a few times like the surface of water. Du Jialua and Tianyu saw that the 3's all-out attack didn't affect the restriction at all. They knew that the cultivator who set up the restriction was far stronger than the 3 of them. Unless enlightened Debao broke the seal and used his core forging strength to break the restriction, it would be difficult for him to do so. Du Jialua hesitated for a moment before asking with a lack of confidence, "Taoist Master Debao, why don't we gather all the demon soldiers together? If Taoist Master knows how to control demon soldiers, then we can combine the power of all the demon soldiers and add the 3 of us to try and break this restriction." Debao thought to himself that this kid actually dared to make a move. However, he still shook his head and said, "What can these few demon soldiers do? Moreover, the most important thing for these demon soldiers now is to collect nectar, not to break the restriction." He didn't know if the other 3 kids found a secret spiritual herb garden in the space. There were a lot of spiritual herbs and they were old enough. The quality of the nectar collected by the purple crystal bees must be high enough. Zealand's queen bee would be able to brew more royal jelly. She was currently at the 2nd stage of the core forging realm. If she personally brought the queen bee into this space, she would definitely be able to advance to the 3rd stage of the core forging realm in the future. Debao looked at the purple crystal bees hovering in the spiritual herb garden behind him with some pity. There were two ways for the purple crystal bees, including the queen bee, to increase their cultivation. One was to absorb spiritual energy on their own to cultivate, and the other was to absorb the essence of various plants in the process of collecting nectar to enhance their own cultivation. After the purple crystal bee Queen Zilan advanced to the second stage of the core forging realm, her cultivation progress had been very slow in the past few years because she hadn't found a large spiritual herb garden with sufficient quantity and quality. If the queen bee could lead the swarm into the space of the Fist Valley, Zilan's cultivation would definitely improve. Perfected Master Debao, what should we do now? Tian Yu's words interrupted Debao's thoughts. Debao looked at the invisible barrier in front of him again and chuckled. Then, he took out a talisman with a mixture of 3 colors under the two's expectant gazes. This is a restriction-breaking talisman? Tian Yu looked at the talisman in Debao's hand with uncertainty. A trace of joy flashed across his face. Debao didn't answer. Instead, he threw the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman at the invisible barrier in front of him. Lu Ping was also proficient in talisman making in his early years. However, after advancing to the blood condensation realm, Lu Ping became obsessed with the art of alchemy and put his talisman-making skills aside. It wasn't that his talent in talisman making was inferior to his alchemy skills. Now that he had obtained the Ying Tian faction's talisman inheritance in the Ying Tian dojo, especially the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman, Lu Ping picked up the talisman-making skills again. During the 10 years of closed-door cultivation, he quickly made the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman. During this trip to the Fist Valley, Lu Ping already knew that there was a small courtyard left behind by a spirit plant farmer of the Ying Tian faction in the space. It was used to guard and manage the growth of the spirit herbs in this space. Naturally, he also knew about the invisible barrier outside the fenced courtyard. Therefore, he gave the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman that he made recently to Debao just in case. 3 colorful rays of light swept through the talisman, and the barrier at the fenced courtyard immediately began to melt as if it was snow under the warm sun. Debao suddenly shouted, "Hurry up, let's put in more effort." The 3 of them worked with all their might again. The barrier that had been torn open by the restriction-breaking talisman was completely shattered, and the house finally opened up to the 3 of them. Du Jialua looked at Debao and thought about Debao's endless tricks and treasures along the way in the space. He couldn't help but say enviously, "Jinren Debao, I think you should be called Jinren Duo Bao. Treasure-seeking rat should also be called Duo Bao rat." Debao was stunned, but Tian Yu laughed and said, "Junior brother Du Jinren Debao doesn't dare to be called Jinren Duo Bao, but I can call you Duo Bao rat." Du Jialua was confused and wanted to ask, but Debao shouted, "Hurry up and go in. What nonsense are you talking about?" Du Jialua was confused, but when he saw that Tian Yu had already followed Debao into the fenced courtyard with a smile, Du Jialua could only put his doubts aside for the time being. His curiosity about the fenced courtyard immediately took over. There was a layer of excitement on his face, and he hurriedly ran into the fenced courtyard. Chapter 7:18. Outside the Fist Valley space, Lu Ping and the other 4 late-stage core forging realm cultivators worked together to open the Fist Valley space again. Half a day had passed and more than half of the cultivators had returned. They handed their harvests to the alchemy masters from the various sects to sort them out. Out of the 18 cultivators from Zhenling sect, only 8 returned. Not even half of them returned. 3 of them were heavily injured, and the 4 third-level blood condensation realm disciples that entered the blood condensation realm didn't return. Out of the 24 disciples from the Gu clan, 15 had returned, and the Mountain Universe sect had also returned with 11 disciples. Both of them had far surpassed the Yingshan Immortal Academy. The disciples from the 2 sects had already begun to discuss among themselves, and there were sneers from time to time. The disciples that they had painstakingly nurtured had died in the Fist Valley space. Obviously, they thought that Jinling would definitely suffer a huge loss this time. Looking at Lu Ping, who had his eyes closed and a calm expression, enlightened Master Shen Fang was the first to lose his cool. He walked towards Lu Ping and said, "Senior brother, what do you think?" Lu Ping opened his eyes and looked at enlightened Master Shen Fang. He smiled and said, "Junior brother, don't be impatient. There's still half a day left. You just need to wait patiently." Enlightened Master Shen Fang felt much more at ease when he saw Lu Ping's confident expression. However, he heard a sneer in his ear. This enlightened Master Shen Ping sure is patient. He doesn't care about the lives of his own disciples at all. Enlightened Master Fei Hong looked at his junior brother with some reproach. Just as he was about to say something, Lu Ping glanced at him indifferently and said, "Who are you? Tell me your name." This enlightened master who came to replace Pang Fei Yun felt as if a pair of sharp swords were stabbing at him when Lu Ping looked at him. He felt as if his entire body was immersed in ice. However, when he heard Lu Ping's disdainful words and expression, his face immediately turned red. He pointed at Lu Ping and said coldly, "You're too arrogant. When the matter in the Fist Valley is over, I'll definitely ask for a few moves from you." Lu Ping didn't even bother to look at him. He just casually said, "It's the same if you ask for advice now." This Jinren was a rather magnanimous person in the sect. Otherwise, he would not have been sent to take over Pang Fei Yun's duties. However, he was provoked by Lu Ping's words, and he was unable to back down. Because he knew that he was no match for Lu Ping. Taoist Master Flying Rainbow blamed his junior brother for being impetuous, but then his expression changed and he said, a disciple is coming out." Everyone was attracted by the movement in the space tunnel. The Mountain Universe sect's Taoist master fiercely turned his face away. How could he not know that his senior sister was taking the opportunity to find a way out of this embarrassing situation? However, this made the people who wanted to watch the show secretly sigh, "What a pity." Lu Ping looked at Taoist Master Flying Rainbow and thought to himself that this core forging level 8 alchemy grandmaster's divine will was really not bad. It seemed to be a level higher than a peak core forging level cultivator's divine will. It was almost comparable to the divine will of a Dharma adept. This time, a disciple from the Gu clan came out first, followed by a disciple from the Mountain Universe sect. However, no one from the Ying Shan Immortal Academy appeared. Taoist Xin Fang looked worriedly at Lu Ping, who still didn't seem to care. On the other side, the Mountain Universe sect's Taoist master glanced in the direction of the Immortal Academy and sneered silently. Lu Ping wasn't worried because the Amethyst Queen Bee told him that there were at least 5 third-level blood condensation realm bees alive. At the same time, there were also 5 bee swarms active. Of Lu Ping's 5 bee swarms, the 4 third-level blood condensation realm disciples each carried 1 bee swarm. The largest 100 bee swarm was with Debao, and Debao followed Du Jialua into the space. This meant that the 4 third-level blood condensation realm disciples and Du Jialua were still alive. This meant that there were at least 5 Ying Shan Immortal Academy disciples alive. As for the other 5, the Amethyst Queen Bee had already informed Lu Ping that the aura of the amethyst bees on their bodies had disappeared. This meant that they must have been ambushed in the space, and the amethyst bees they carried with them had already died. This meant that the 5 of them were probably dead. In the Fist Valley space, Du Jialua and Tianyu each stuck a divine movement talisman on their legs. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't fly in this space, they wouldn't have needed to use these talismans. At the same time, the 2 of them were amazed that Taoist Master Debao even had these talismans on him. As Du Jialua ran, he said to Tianyu, "It's such a pity that senior brother Tian is still alive. There's such a large spiritual herb garden around the house, but we only had time to collect all the 3,000-year spiritual herbs. There are still a large amount of 1,000-year spiritual herbs and 500-year spiritual herbs growing there." Tianyu also felt that it was a pity, but he still said, "All right, our harvest this time can be said to be the most in the Fist Valley space. We got nearly 1,000 3,000-year spiritual herbs in one go. What's there to complain about? If we continue to collect those 1,000-year spiritual herbs, I'm afraid the Fist Valley space will close." At this moment, Debao, who was hiding in Du Jialua's sleeve, suddenly exclaimed, 2 miles to the east, there's actually a group of Immortal Academy disciples who haven't left the space. Let's go meet up with them." Du Jialua and Tianyu heard this and quickly headed east. 2 miles passed in the blink of an eye, and they heard Debao say again, "I was wondering why the 3 of you were standing there without moving. We were originally blocked by someone. The 2 of you take these things and fight your way out during the chaos later. There's not much time left. If we continue to delay, we will all be sealed in this space." Du Jialua and Tianyu each took the things that Debao handed over. The 2 of them looked at each other and thought to themselves, "This perfected Debao is so unreasonable in beating people up." Senior Martial Brother Sun, Junior Martial Brother Qin, and Junior Martial Brother Zhou were also unlucky. They had been chased all the way here, and it wasn't easy for them to find the 2 secret areas marked out by Lu Ping on the map. After collecting a few hundred 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, they were once again ambushed. Ying Shan Immortal Academy, I advise you to hand over all the spiritual herbs on you. That way we will let bygones be bygones for the fact that the three of you killed a disciple of my Gu clan. Otherwise, the three of you can stay here and wait for death. 3 purple-headed demonic bees surrounded the 3 Yingshan Immortal Academy 3rd layer blood condensation realm disciples. The 3 of them had already been blocked by 3 Gu family disciples and 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples. The leader of the 3, senior brother's son, sneered, "Humph, don't think that I don't know about your tricks. If not for the demon weapons that Elder Shen Ping bestowed on us, the 5 of you would have already attacked us. Now you want us to hand over our things? That's just wishful thinking. If worst comes to worst, we'll just have to fight to the death. In any case, the spatial gate is closing right in front of us. Even if the 3 of us aren't your match, it's still easy for us to hold you up. You dare? Do the 3 of you really think that we won't dare to surround and kill you? Don't think that you are safe just because you have a few demon weapons on you. They are only at the 1st layer of blood condensation realm. What can they do?" Senior brother's son looked at the other party's fierce expression. There was a trace of panic in his eyes. From time to time he glanced behind him, clearly calculating the time when the space would close. Senior brother's son sneered and looked at the 2 disciples of the Mountain Universe sect beside him. "That's strange. These 2 are clearly disciples of the Mountain Universe sect. Why are they together with the cultivators of the Gu family?" The 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples' expressions changed. One of them said, "Kill them." The 3 Gu family cultivators also reacted. They absolutely could not reveal today's matter. These 2 disciples were spies that the Gu family had painstakingly planted in the Mountain Universe sect. In the future they might have the power to topple the Mountain Universe sect. They absolutely could not let the Yingshan Immortal Academy disciples leak this news. However, just as the 5 of them were about to attack, they suddenly sensed 2 people rapidly approaching them. When the 5 of them turned around, their eyes suddenly widened. Their eyes flashed with horror. They saw tens of talismans in the sky turning into countless ice blades, ice swords, fiery beasts, wood thorns, vine whips, flying stone swords, and so on. All of them came crashing down towards the 5 of them. At this moment, the 5 of them no longer cared about killing the Yingshan Immortal Academy disciples. They quickly used their own methods to block the attacks that filled the sky. Right at this moment, 2 figures took the opportunity to rush in. "Junior brother Du, why is it you? And this is senior brother Tian?" Du Jelua handed 3 divine movement talismans to the 3 of them and said, "Let's go. There's not much time left. Now is not the time to be entangled with these people." The 5 of them took the chance to break through. Senior brother's son seemed to have thought of something. He turned his head and said, "The 2 of you don't have to worry. I will definitely not reveal your identities to your sect. The 2 of you don't have to worry that the Mountain Universe sect will find out about this." Outside the space, Lu Ping sensed that the 5 of them were rapidly approaching the spatial passageway through the mysterious connection between the Purple Crystal Wasp King and the Purple Crystal Wasp. Reverend Li Nan was also slightly anxious like Reverend Xian Fang. However, he was still a guest elder of Yingshan Immortal Academy. Even though he was trusted by everyone in the academy, there was still a layer of distance between him and Reverend Xian Fang and Elder Shen Ping. Reverend Xian Fang had already asked Lu Ping. It was not good for him to ask now. At this moment, Reverend Li Nan suddenly noticed that Elder Shen Ping, who had been expressionless all this time, suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. His heart immediately relaxed. Then he saw Elder Shen Ping's eyes suddenly open and he said softly, "They're here." Although Elder Shen Ping's voice was soft, everyone's expression shook when they heard it. Because of the obstruction of the spatial passageway, although everyone could sense if someone was approaching the passageway, they could not tell which sect's disciple was from. Therefore, even if Elder Shen Ping discovered that someone had returned, it might not be a disciple of Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, whether it was the Gu clan or the Mountain Universe sect's reverend, when they used their divine senses to observe the passageway, they did not discover any traces of disciples. Everyone did not mind. After all, Elder Shen Ping was extremely powerful. It was normal for his divine sense to be stronger than everyone else's. However, after waiting for a while, they still could not detect anyone approaching the spatial passageway. They began to look at each other. The new reverend from the Mountain Universe sect was the first to explode. He sneered and said, deliberately mystifying things. "You've lost the face of a late core forging cultivator." Chapter 719. As soon as the Mountain Universe sect spiritual master finished speaking, Lu Ping did not bother to hide his murderous intent. The Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master felt as if he had fallen into an icy abyss. Clang clang. A pair of scimitars suddenly appeared in front of the Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master, protecting him. A treasure protecting its owner. This was the effect of a spirit-nurturing level life treasure. The Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master's face turned purple. He hurriedly reached out and the pair of scimitars were kept in his heart space. There were usually two situations in which a treasure could protect its owner. One was when the cultivator was being ambushed, and the other was when the cultivator was frightened. Lu Ping did not ambush him, but the sharpness of his gaze and the murderous intent that emanated from his body had truly frightened the Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master. He was frightened. He was frightened when he was face to face. Furthermore, his opponent was not a Dharma adept, but an 8th level core forging adept. He had actually been frightened by someone of the same level as him? The Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master knew that from today onwards, he would become the laughing stock of the entire Hebei cultivation world. Lu Ping's scornful gaze swept past him. The Gu family spiritual master looked in the direction of the Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master, suppressing his laughter, and looked in the direction of Lu Ping with fear. Actually, it was not just the Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master. Spiritual Master Flying Rainbow, Spiritual Master Gu Hun, Spiritual Master Gu Zhou, Spiritual Master Jian Ming, and the others were all shocked by Lu Ping's sudden burst of power. However, Lu Ping was mainly facing the Mountain Universe Sect spiritual master, so they were only affected by the shockwaves. These cultivators, regardless of whether they were in the Mountain Universe Sect or the Gu family, could be said to be extremely successful. The Dharma adepts had all seen this with their own eyes before, and they knew very well how they felt when facing a Dharma adept. However, in that instant, the feeling that Lu Ping gave them was exactly the same as when facing a Dharma adept. The scene fell silent. However, Spiritual Master Flying Rainbow and Spiritual Master Gu Hun suddenly froze. Of the two of them, one was a late core forging adept of the Mountain Universe Sect, the other was a pillar of the Gu family. In that instant, the two of them saw the cultivators flying towards them through the spatial tunnel. 5 people, 4 at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. 5 people, 4 at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. Enlightened Master Gu Hun looked at Lu Ping in surprise. This time, only Yingshan Immortal Academy had 1st layer blood condensation realm disciples. But since they appeared together with 4 other cultivators, this meant that all 5 of them were from Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, what surprised Enlightened Master Fei Hong and Enlightened Master Gu Hun the most wasn't the fact that the 5 disciples belonged to Yingshan Immortal Academy, but the fact that Lu Ping noticed them so early on. And from Lu Ping's expression, it was clear that he could clearly tell that the 5 disciples were from Yingshan Immortal Academy. What a frightening range of divine sense. At this moment, all the enlightened masters present sensed through their spiritual will that someone was approaching the passageway. They also sensed the cultivation of the 1st level blood condensation cultivator. The cultivators from the various sects looked at Yingshan Immortal Academy with complicated gazes. On the other hand, Enlightened Master Xian Fang and Enlightened Master Li Nan were overjoyed. When Tianyu, Du Jialua, and the others came out of the spatial tunnel, the number of people who returned from the Yingshan Immortal Academy had increased to 13. The 5 of them walked towards Venerable Xian Fang. They wanted to hand over all the spiritual herbs they had harvested from the Fist Valley to Venerable Xian Fang. Then Venerable Xian Fang would sort out the spiritual herbs. With Debao's help, Du Jialua walked towards the fenced courtyard in the deepest part of the spatial tunnel. Along the way he found a few spiritual herb gardens and harvested plenty of 500-year-old and 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Moreover, he was only at the 1st level of the blood condensation realm. Being able to harvest as much as a 3rd level blood condensation realm cultivator was already very good. As for the other 4 3rd level blood condensation realm cultivators, including Tianyu, their harvests were nothing to write home about. Taoist Xian Fang looked at the total of 5,000 to 6,000 spirit grasses taken out by the 4 of them and was slightly disappointed. However, looking at the excited faces of the 5 of them, he thought that the 5 of them were excited because they had survived a disaster in the void space. Originally he wanted to reprimand them, but he swallowed it back. A moment later, 2 disciples of the Gu family and 2 disciples of the Mountain Universe Sect rushed out of the space tunnel in a sorry state. They were 4 of the 5 people who had joined forces to stop Senior Sun and the others. However, for some reason one of the disciples of the Gu family was missing. When Du Jialua and the others used their talismans to break through the 5 people's obstruction, they were too anxious about the spatial tunnel's closing time. As a result, They did not know that Debao's talismans had killed one of the Gu family disciples. The 2 disciples of the Gu clan glared fiercely at Du Jialua and the other 4 disciples of the Yingshan Immortal Academy. They saw that senior brother Sun was also smiling at them. At the same time he was whispering something to Taoist Xianfang beside him. Their expressions turned serious. They lowered their heads and walked towards the cultivators of their own families. The 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples were even more dejected. There was even a look of fear on their faces. Rumble. Muffled rumbling sounds could be heard. After 3 months, the spatial tunnel finally collapsed and closed again. The next time it reopened would be 300 years later. In this trip to the Fist Valley, Yingshan Immortal Academy had lost a total of 5 disciples. Among them, 2 were at the 2nd level of the Blood Condensation Realm, and 3 were at the 1st level of the Blood Condensation Realm. Of the 18 disciples from the Mountain Universe sect, 14 returned. However, 2 of them were spies from the Gu family. Of the 20 disciples from the Gu family, only 18 returned. As for the harvests, the various pill refiners had collected all the harvests the moment the disciples came out. Clearly, no one had any intention of revealing their harvests. On the Ying River, a large ship was sailing against the current. Lu Ping took out a small flag from his sleeve. It was the water-controlling flag that he had not used for a long time. Lu Ping held the small flag in his hand and waved it lightly. Instantly, the small flag turned into a 3-zhang tall sail. The sail moved without any wind, and the speed of the ship instantly doubled. Lu Ping nodded at Du Jialua and the 4 3rd-level Blood Condensation Realm disciples. "The 4 of you follow me." After saying that, Lu Ping took the lead and walked towards the cabin. Xianfang was curious, so he followed behind Lu Ping. Although Li Nan was also curious about what Lu Ping had said to the 3rd-level Blood Condensation Realm disciples, and why there was another 1st-level Blood Condensation Realm disciple, he hesitated for a moment. In the end he did not follow Lu Ping. Lu Ping paused at the door of the cabin. He turned around and smiled at Li Nan. "Brother Li, come in and take a look. There are some things that I need Brother Li's help with." Li Nan was stunned for a moment. Then he said excitedly, "This? I'll be right there." Inside the cabin, Xianfang asked impatiently, "Senior brother, what did you ask them to do in the space? Why is it that the few with the highest cultivation level have the same harvest as the others? Some of them are even worse than the others." Lu Ping smiled. "Junior brother, don't be impatient. Did the 5 of you find the secret places I told you about?" Senior Martial Brother Sun took the lead and said, "Elder gave us several secret areas, but Disciple, Junior Martial Brother Zhou and Junior Martial Brother Qian only managed to find 2 of them. The other places were blocked by space cracks and disciples were unable to enter." After saying that, the 3 of them took out dozens of jade boxes that Lu Ping had given them from their storage artifacts. Xianfang let out a strange cry. "Jade crystal boxes? Did you guys find a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb in there? That's not right. If there are 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the space of the Fist Valley, why didn't the Ying He Dao Universe and Yingshan sects discover them after thousands of years?" Perfected Li Nan was shocked when he saw the jade crystal box. However, he considered one more thing. Previously, the space in Fist Valley had always been secretly controlled by Ying He and the other 2 factions. It was difficult for others to know what was going on inside, but Elder Xian Ping clearly knew about it. Why was that? Lu Ping noticed Li Nan's puzzled gaze. He did not explain but waved his sleeves and opened all the jade boxes. Xianfang was so shocked that he almost coughed. "It's indeed 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. There's almost 2,000 of them? Moreover, this is the double ice leaf, this is the scarlet flame grass, and there's also the rain leaf flower. These are all precious spirit herbs that are almost extinct in the cultivation world. Even among spirit herbs that are 3,000 years old, they are all extremely precious." Li Nan was already dumbfounded. If the Mountain Universe sect and the Gu clan found out about so many 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs, the 2 sects would probably join forces to attack the Yingshan Immortal Academy. Lu Ping's face was also filled with joy because he had found more than a dozen types of rare spirit herbs needed to concoct the spirit forging pellet among the spirit herbs. Lu Ping picked out all the spirit herbs and picked out about 400 of the spirit herbs that he needed. Then he pushed the remaining 1,500 spirit herbs to enlighten Master Xianfang and said, "Junior Martial Brother, take these spirit herbs for now. You can pick some of them for practice in the future. As for the rest, give them to Junior Martial Uncle Tianshan and ask him to keep them." Although Xianfang was envious of these spiritual herbs, He quickly waved his hands and said, "No, no, no, senior brother, I am only familiar with refining mid-core forging pills now. The 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs are not in my hands. It's better to leave them in senior brother's hands." Lu Ping smiled and picked out a few of the spiritual herbs that were easier to refine from Jinling's legacy elixir. There were about 100 of them that were commonly used to refine half-step Dharma pills. He handed them to the flustered Shen Fang and said, "It's better to be prepared. The improvement of one's alchemy skills is built on the foundation of wasting large amounts of spiritual herbs." Seeing that Shen Fang still wanted to decline, Lu Ping said, "Don't worry and take them. You don't have to worry about the elixir pavilion. Since I made the decision, those two won't say anything." Shen Fang knew that the elixir pavilion that Lu Ping mentioned was not the Celestial Academy's elixir pavilion, but the elixir pavilion of Jinling. Those two naturally referred to the two grandmasters, Tianlu Laozu and Tianqin Laozu. Only these two had the authority to handle the 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in Jinling. Shen Fang knew that Lu Ping had a lot of influence. Although he was not an alchemist trained by the elixir pavilion, he was still the third grandmaster alchemist in the sect. His position in the sect was very important. Since he wanted to hand these spiritual herbs to him, no one else would dare to say anything. Chapter 720. Although perfected Shen Fang did not reveal that Lu Ping was an alchemy grandmaster, he had repeatedly said that these 3,000-year-old herbs could only be used to their fullest potential when they were in Lu Ping's hands. Perfected Li Nan, who was at the side, was naturally stunned. Could it be that this powerful elder Shen Ping was also an alchemy grandmaster? And from what perfected Shen Fang had said, elder Shen Ping's alchemy skills were obviously above perfected Shen Fang's. Thinking back to how elder Shen Ping had managed to convince the two alchemy grandmasters of the Mountain Universe sect and the Gu family with just a few words, who else could have such skills besides an alchemy grandmaster? Once he thought of an alchemy grandmaster, perfected Li Nan felt his throat tighten. This was an alchemy grandmaster. In the cultivation world, just this identity alone was enough to be mentioned in the same breath as a Dharma adept. Also, who were the two people that elder Shen Ping mentioned? Elder Shen Tian and Laozu of Tianshan? Obviously not, and from the tone of elder Shen Ping's words, it was obvious that he had placed himself in the same position as the two people. In the Yingshan Immortal Academy, the only person who could be compared to an alchemy grandmaster was Laozu of Tianshan. No matter what, elder Shen Tian was not qualified. Li Nan was also a quick-witted person. Otherwise, he would not have been entrusted with so many matters of the Immortal Academy by the old ancestor of Tianshan Mountain. A bold idea immediately emerged in his mind. Could the two that elder Shen Ping mentioned be alchemy grandmasters like him? Even perfected Li Nan himself was shocked by this thought. But immediately, perfected Li Nan remembered a rumor about the Yingshan Immortal Academy that had been circulating in the Yingshan mountain range. It was said that the Yingshan Immortal Academy was not actually founded by Guotianshan Laozu. There was definitely another power supporting it, and the Yingshan Immortal Academy was just a tentacle of this power that had infiltrated the Yingshan mountain range. Towards this rumor, perfected Li Nan had originally been skeptical, but now he was 70 to 80% sure that it was true. Perfected Master Li Nan was in a daze, and there was a hint of surprise in his daze, which naturally fell into Lu Ping and perfected Master Shen Fang's eyes. Perfected Li Nan was instantly alerted. When he turned around to look, he saw Lu Ping looking at him with a faint smile. Perfected Li Nan heaved a long sigh of relief and said, "I was shocked by the generosity of these disciples. 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. How could Ying He sect, Tao Universe sect and Ying Mountain sect not discover any 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs after entering the Fist Valley space more than 10 times? Lu Ping was not bothered by it and said with a smile, "They were just lucky to have obtained some ancient books passed down by the Ying Tian sect. From them, they were lucky enough to discover a hidden path hidden in a few space cracks. These disciples could be considered to have a narrow escape." After saying that, he looked at Du Jialuo and Tianyu. Between the two of them, Tianyu had already found a hidden space with 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs before they met. Then he and Du Jialuo followed De Bao into the deepest part of the Fist Valley space and found the Fengba courtyard. In the end, due to the lack of time, they could only pick more than 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs from the large spiritual herb garden around the Fengba courtyard. In addition to the spiritual herbs that Tianyu had found previously, There were close to 1,700 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in total. Oh, so the two of you didn't manage to collect all the spiritual herbs in the deepest part of the space due to the lack of time. Not only did you leave behind a large number of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, but you also didn't manage to collect many 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in time? Lu Ping asked Tianyu in surprise. Although there was a little pity in his expression, there was also a hint of joy. The few of you hand over the bee swarms I gave you. Lu Ping made a few hand seals and a third-level blood condensation realm bee flew out from each of the 5 of them. After the 3 of them handed over 4 spirit beast pouches containing 50 bee swarms to Lu Ping, the buzzing of the bees suddenly sounded outside the cabin. Lu Ping casually opened the cabin door and 8 third-level blood condensation realm bees flew out. Suddenly, a 3-inch square gate that seemed to be made of gold appeared above Lu Ping's palm. All the bees lined up neatly and flashed through the gate. Footsteps sounded outside the cabin. The other 8 Immortal Academy disciples had obviously received Lu Ping's notice and came to the cabin together. After the 8 of them greeted the 3 enlightened masters, Lu Ping pointed with his finger and 13 golden talismans appeared in front of them. He said, "These are the talisman treasures that I made during my free time. They will be your reward for entering the space of the Fist Valley this time. Although these talisman treasures are different from each other, their power is more or less the same. Once they are used, even early-stage core forging cultivators will be heavily injured. They can be used to save your lives." The 13 talisman treasures not only shocked the 13 Immortal Academy disciples, but also Enlightened Master Xian Fang and Enlightened Master Li Nan were stunned by Lu Ping's generosity. Lu Ping looked at everyone's expression and smiled. He said, "After you return, you can go to Enlightened Master Shen Tao of the Immortal Academy to receive a high-grade magic tool each. You might not be able to use high-grade magic tools now, but you will be able to use them after you advance to the mid-stage blood condensation realm." Although the crowd did not know when Enlightened Master Shen Tao of the Immortal Academy appeared, and he seemed to be a tool refiner, a high-grade magic tool as a reward was enough for the disciples to cheer. One must know that in the North Sea mid-stage blood condensation realm disciples were most commonly using mid-grade magic tools. Some disciples who were not doing well even used low-grade magic tools after advancing to the mid-stage blood condensation realm. Although the Middle Earth was rich, the Immortal Academy was still newly established. Even with Junling's support, they did not have the courage to let all the mid-stage blood condensation realm disciples use high-grade magic tools. Lu Ping looked at the disciples who were brimming with joy and nodded at Enlightened Master Xian Fang. Enlightened Master Xian Fang smiled and said, "With Senior Brother Xian Ping and Senior Brother Xian Tao as examples, my rewards are a little inferior." Enlightened Master Xian Fang took out 13 jade bottles and distributed them to the disciples. He said, "These are 13 bottles of sea soul pills. Take them after you advance to the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm. It will help you break through the bottleneck of the 3rd layer and advance to the mid-stage blood condensation realm." Everyone happily accepted it, and only then did they reluctantly leave the cabin. Enlightened Master Li Nan sighed. "Elder Xian Ping is really generous. Even the disciples of the large sects are not as generous as you." Lu Ping smiled and said, "These disciples took the risk of dying in the space. Compared to the 5 disciples who died, they deserve these rewards." Lu Ping looked at Senior Brother's son and the other 4 disciples who were still in the cabin. He took out 5 jade bottles from his storage artifact and said, "These are the half caddy of monster honey I promised each of you. Although Du Jialua joined the mission halfway, he also has a share of the reward." Although the disciples accepted the bottles respectfully, they obviously did not know what the monster honey was for. Was it for drinking water? Enlightened Master Shen Fang could not stand it anymore. One must know that Lu Ping's amethyst honey and amethyst royal jelly were handed over to the sect on a regular basis every year. The amethyst royal jelly was naturally divided between the 2 elders of the Pill Pavilion. As for the others, only the alchemy masters could get some. Compared to the preciousness of the amethyst royal jelly, Lu Ping handed over more amethyst honey to the sect. Moreover, most of the honey ended up in the hands of the alchemy masters of the sect. Enlightened Master Shen Fang could get 2.5 caddy of amethyst royal jelly every year. This was because Enlightened Master Shen Fang had the lowest qualification among the alchemy masters of the Jinling sect. Even so, Enlightened Master Shen Fang treasured the amethyst honey very much. It could be used as a panacea in alchemy. If the few of you really use this to drink water, it'll be a reckless waste of God's good gifts. If you don't need these things, Take them to the alchemy room and exchange them for pills that you need for your own cultivation. But it's best to exchange for pills that are more useful for breaking through bottlenecks. Don't exchange for ordinary cultivation pills. This way, with half a caddy of amethyst honey, it will be enough for your cultivation to advance to the late blood condensation realm. Enlightened Master Xianfang's words made senior brother Sun and the rest's eyes lit up. Only now did they know what kind of treasure the amethyst honey was. Lu Ping felt ashamed in his heart. In fact, most of the amethyst honey was used by Lu Ping to make tea. If enlightened Master Xianfang, who saw it as a reckless waste of God's good gifts, knew what he would think. After sending the 5 away, Lu Ping smiled and said to enlightened Master Xianfang, "Junior brother Xianfang, I still have a lot of amethyst honey. Since junior brother wants to use it for alchemy, you can take half a caddy." Enlightened Master Xianfang was overjoyed. He had long wanted to ask Lu Ping for some amethyst honey, but because of the grudge between them decades ago, enlightened Master Xianfang was too embarrassed to ask. Lu Ping smiled and took out 2 jade bottles, one big and one small, from his storage artifact. The small jade bottle was made of chalcedony. Enlightened Master Xianfang's heart tightened when he saw the small chalcedony bottle with the amethyst honey. Lu Ping smiled and passed the 2 jade bottles to him. Enlightened Master Xianfang put the big jade bottle with the amethyst honey into his storage artifact. Holding the small chalcedony bottle in his hand, he suddenly stood up and bowed to Lu Ping. Senior brother's magnanimity is something enlightened Master Xianfang cannot compare. Although perfected Li Nan on the side did not know what was in the small jade bottle, for an alchemy master who was used to seeing rare treasures to bow so solemnly, it was obvious that the item in the small jade bottle was extraordinary. At this moment, Lu Ping handed another jade bottle to enlightened Master Li Nan. "Brother Li, take this bottle of monster honey. Treat it as a gift from your little brother to Brother Li." Enlightened Master Li Nan nodded his head. Enlightened Master Li Nan did not know about the amethyst honey, but from enlightened Master Xianfang's reaction just now, he knew that the demonic honey was extraordinary. He said, "How can I take it? I don't know anything about alchemy. It's a waste for me to keep it." Lu Ping said, "Brother Li, you don't have to be so polite. Just take it." Lu Ping stuffed the bottle of amethyst honey into enlightened Master Li Nan's hand. He then turned to the corner of the cabin and said, "Come out. Tell me, what else did you find in this space?" "Boss, you have to help me break the seal first." A rodent that looked like a ball rolled out from the corner of the cabin and complained. Chapter 721. Enlightened Master Li Nan had already noticed that when Elder Xian Ping brought the 5 disciples into the cabin, a blood condensation realm rat demon slid out from the sleeve of the early blood condensation disciple and hid in a corner of the cabin without making a sound. At that time, Lu Ping and enlightened Master Xianfang didn't say anything. Enlightened Master Li Nan was a smart person and naturally wouldn't point it out. It was just an early blood condensation realm rat demon, what could it do? However, when this rat demon ran out and spoke in the human language, enlightened Master Li Nan couldn't help but be surprised. It wasn't because Debao could speak in the human language at the early blood condensation realm, but because enlightened Master Li Nan could see that Debao's cultivation was actually sealed. What surprised enlightened Master Li Nan was that this rat demon wasn't a high-level monster. It was the lowest-level spirit-seeking mouse. This kind of spirit-seeking mouse was usually at the late blood refining realm at most. It was already considered heaven-defying for a spirit-seeking mouse to break through to the blood condensation realm. However, this spirit-seeking mouse was clearly not only at the early blood condensation realm. Lu Ping cast a few hand seals and a purplish-blue light shone on Debao's body. It was as if Debao's body was resonating. Before Debao could enjoy the feeling of regaining his core forging realm cultivation, he suddenly realized that his cultivation had only increased to the mid-blood condensation realm. Debao asked fearfully, "Boss, is there something wrong with your sealing technique? Why is your cultivation only at the mid-blood condensation realm and it's not moving anymore?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Debao, do you want to recover your core forging realm cultivation base now and then drop from the second layer to the first layer? Or do you want to slowly recover your cultivation base this way so that you can strengthen your foundation and build a foundation for your future cultivation?" Debao asked cautiously, "Boss, didn't you say that even if my cultivation drops to the first level, I can still strengthen my foundation after cultivating again?" Lu Ping only said one sentence, "The latter can go further." Debao immediately jumped up and said, "Then of course it's the latter." It was hard for him to jump so high with such a fat and heavy body. However, he forgot to ask Lu Ping how long it would take if he used the latter method. Since that's the case, let's cut the crap. Hurry up and show us what we've gained in the Fist Valley. Debeo was very depressed that he couldn't return to his human form for the time being, but he still didn't dare to disobey Lu Ping's order. He took out a jade box from the storage pouch hanging from his neck. After opening it, there were 4 big and 6 small beads inside, each containing a dense qi. Is this a spirit-gathering pearl? There are actually so many of them? This time, Taoist Li Nan finally saw a treasure that he recognized. However, there seemed to be too many of these treasures appearing at once. Even Taoist Li Nan himself could not remember how many surprises he had received today. From the looks of it, there should be at least 4 medium-sized spiritual veins in the area formed by the spatial crack. No wonder there is such a large spiritual herb garden inside. So many spiritual veins have been nourishing these spiritual herbs for hundreds and thousands of years. Each of the 4 big spirit-gathering pearls could nurture a small spiritual vein, while the 6 small spirit-gathering pearls meant 6 small spiritual veins. Lu Ping kept the jade box and looked at Debeo. What else? Debeo took out dozens of jade boxes, which were filled with spiritual herbs that were thousands of years old. Most of them were 3,000 years old. It seemed that these spiritual herbs had been collected and preserved for thousands of years. Obviously, they were left behind by the disciples of the Yingtian sect who were guarding this space. Lu Ping scanned with his divine telekinesis and realized that most of the spiritual herbs had preserved their medicinal properties. Among them, there were many extremely rare spiritual herbs. There were also dozens of spiritual herbs that could be used to refine spirit-forging pills. Lu Ping did not hesitate and kept all the boxes in his storage artifact. What else? Debeo complained. Boss, there are some tools that can be used to cultivate spiritual herbs. Although there are many of these things, they are all magic tools. At most, they are top-grade magic tools. Moreover, most of them can't be used in battle. Debeo, I forgot to tell you. Using the second method to break the seal is equivalent to cultivating for the second time. Only when you reach the 6th layer of the blood condensation realm will you be able to break the second seal and advance to the late blood condensation realm. Similarly, only when you reach the peak of the 9th layer of the blood condensation realm will you be able to break the 3rd seal and advance to the core forging realm. Don't blame me for not reminding you that this time's cultivation is not a true recultivation. If you want to shorten the cultivation period by taking some kind of pill, it's possible. Boss, are you trying to trick me? Debeo shouted angrily. He took out another jade bowl from his storage artifact and said, Boss, let's use the first method. Being in the blood condensation realm is too stifling. Too late. Lu Ping took the jade bowl and looked at the bowl of clean water that emitted a fragrant aroma. Heaven and earth wonder water? Debeo hung his head dejectedly and said, Boss, you're lucky. This was found in a well in the fenced courtyard of the space grotto Heaven. Debeo paused for a moment and said, That well is a place where spirit veins converge. There is an abundance of spirit energy in that well. However, there is a jade bowl hanging above the well. There is already a bowl of clean water in it. I can tell that this jade bowl is not ordinary, so I brought it back. Lu Ping first carefully examined the jade bowl in his hand, then looked at the clean water in it. He suddenly raised his head and said, You took this jade bowl away from the well. What else is in it now? Debeo smiled proudly and said, I knew it was a treasure. Nothing can escape my Lu Debeo's detection. Don't worry, boss. I've already placed another jade bowl on the water in the well. In fact, there is an identical jade bowl on the stone edge of the well. When I saw it, it was obvious that the 2 jade bowls were taking turns. Boss, the clean water in this jade bowl is obviously not ordinary, right? Do you think it's time for my cultivation too? Let's not talk about this anymore. I have my own plans. Give me the last item first. When Debeo heard Lu Ping's words, his expression changed. Then he cried out in surprise and jumped 2 steps back. He said, Boss, how did you know that I have one last treasure? And it's the most important treasure. Lu Ping glanced at Debeo and added on his behalf. I'm scared of you. This time, Debeo carefully took out a wooden box. When Lu Ping saw the wooden box, he was startled. When he held the wooden box in his hand, he saw the secret spirit sealing runes on the surface of the wooden box. For a moment he was speechless. When spiritual master Xianfang saw this, he asked, Senior brother, do you already know what is in the box? Lu Ping nodded and turned to Debeo. Have you seen what is inside? Debeo shook his head and said, I can feel that the thing inside is extraordinary. However, the seal on the surface of the box is not something I can open. Lu Ping nodded and suddenly said, "We've arrived at the Immortal Academy." "Oh wait." Only then did Spiritual Master Li Nan and Spiritual Master Xianfang realize that the giant boat had returned to appear not far from the back mountain of the Yingshan Immortal Academy under the control of Lu Ping's water-controlling flag. Li Nan and Spiritual Master Xianfang naturally knew that Lu Ping was unwilling to tell them about the treasure inside the wooden box. Hence, they got up and walked towards Spiritual Master Lu Xinyuan and Spiritual Master Qi Zicai, who were welcoming the group back. On the pier, enlightened Master Lu Xinyuan sighed when he saw the 13 disciples disembarking. "I've only managed to nurture a little over 20 blood condensation disciples in the past 10 years. In just 3 months I've already lost 5. Qi Zicai smiled faintly and said, "That's why those who survive can go further." Spiritual Master Lu Xinyuan nodded but did not say anything. However, there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. After greeting Lu Xinyuan and Qi Zicai, Lu Ping directly sat on De Gui's back and followed the river towards the forbidden area of the back mountain. Inside the rocky cavern, Lu Ping carefully placed the wooden box on the stone platform in front of him. He formed a few hand seals and rays of bluish-purple light flowed out like streams of water, washing away the seals on the wooden box's surface layer by layer. Lu Ping originally obtained the failing sex restriction breaking secret technique. After that, he received guidance from Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng. Later on, he obtained the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman from the Ying Tian Dojo. Lu Ping's understanding of the restriction-breaking secret technique had reached an extremely high level. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have been able to make the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman in such a short time. In fact, Lu Ping could now make the 4-colored restriction-breaking talisman, but the success rate was not high. Previously, Lu Ping estimated that a 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman would be enough, so he did not give the only 4-colored restriction-breaking talisman to De Bao. The seals on the surface of the wooden box became fainter and fainter until there was no trace of the seals on the surface of the wooden box. Finally, the wooden box cracked automatically with a crack. Lu Ping opened the wooden box and there were 3 golden pills of different sizes wrapped in spirit-sealing talismans. Lu Ping let out a long breath and said, "It's really this thing." Lu Ping opened the 3 spirit-sealing talismans and the 3 pills suddenly burst out with a strong vitality. This aura instantly filled the entire cultivation room of Lu Ping. If Lu Ping had not made a guess and set up a restriction in the entire cave, this vitality would have quickly spread to the entire forbidden area of the back mountain. The Woodluan Golden Pill, it really was the Woodluan Golden Pill. According to legend, it could be used to produce a large number of high-level spirit herbs in an extremely short time. It was a treasure that almost all Dharma adepts in the entire cultivation world coveted. It was also the innate magical power that almost caused the extinction of the Woodluan race. 3 Woodluan Golden Pills, 1 was in the early core forging realm, 1 was in the middle core forging realm, and the biggest one was in the late core forging realm. Chapter 722. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Lu Ping woke up from his closed-door cultivation. He smiled after scanning the stone room with his divine sense and opened the restriction on the stone room. Lu Taohua hopped in from outside the stone room. When she saw Lu Ping, she giggled and said, "Brother, shouldn't that jade bowl be given to Peach Blossom?" There was a jade bowl in front of Lu Ping. It was found by De Bao in the well in the fenced courtyard of the Fist Valley. Back then there was a bowl full of clean water in the well. This bowl of clean water was a kind of heaven and earth oddity. It was a kind of strange water that could be used to improve the tripure true pupils. This kind of strange water was extremely rare. It was the water in the well that was nourished by the spiritual vein all year round. After that, it gradually condensed into a water essence. This water essence was different from the essence of Kuei water. It didn't have much effect when used to condense a protective aura. Instead, it was quite miraculous when used to cultivate other special techniques and abilities. This kind of water essence would normally evaporate after being formed in the well water. It was extremely difficult to collect. However, this jade bowl was a strange treasure. Although it was only condensed with a treasure restriction, it was quite effective in collecting some spiritual liquid and maintaining its special effect. Moreover, there must be a special formation left by the Ying Tian sect in the well to help this jade bowl condense the water essence. The scale of Lu Ping's spiritual herb garden in the House of Gold grew bigger and bigger. There were more and more types of spiritual herbs. Previously, Luan Yu took care of it, so Lu Ping basically didn't have to worry about it. After Luan Yu left with Laozu Wujiu, Lu Ping could only put part of his energy into the management of the spiritual herb garden. However, this situation allowed Lu Ping to regain his freedom after Lu Taohua transformed. Lu Taohua was the transformation of the spirit demon peach tree. Although she received the inheritance of the Longhuai ancestor, she had a quiet and elegant temperament. She naturally liked spiritual plants and flowers. Moreover, her talent was very beneficial to the growth of these plants. Therefore, Lu Ping gave her the task of managing the entire spiritual herb garden in the House of Gold. Lu Taohua obviously enjoyed it. After that, Lu Ping gave Lu Taohua all the books related to the cultivation of spirit herbs, flowers, and trees. He also taught her the concoction methods of the 100-flower dew, 1,000-fragrance dew, and a few other spirit liquids. All these years, Lu Taohua had been keeping Lu Ping's spirit herb garden in good order. Some of the 500-year-old spirit herbs had already begun to mature. Although there were a total of 36 drops of the Wonder Dew of 10,000, the rarity of the Wonder Dew of 10,000 was even higher than some high-grade heaven-rank spirit items. Then, where did the Wonder Dew of 10,000 that Fei Ling sect needed to refine the spirit forging pill come from? The Wonder Dew of 10,000 was not like those spirit herbs that could be obtained through meticulous cultivation. It was a spirit item of heaven and earth that was nurtured by the heavens and earth. Obtaining it depended entirely on luck. Who knew where such a rare treasure could be found? However, Lu Ping immediately thought of the East Sea's Parish secret grounds, the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven's Golden Canyon, and the pool of 10,000 poison liquid in his House of Gold. Lu Ping's heart was in turmoil. Could it be that the birth of spirit items of heaven and earth could really be controlled through some kind of method? Lu Ping pinched his fingers and counted the time. It was time for perfected Lu Shenyuan to return to the North Sea. Lu Ping rummaged through his interspatial mystic instrument and found a bunch of things. These were the things he wanted to get rid of enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan and bring to Hu Lili and his friends. Although Junling had secretly mastered the ultra-long-distance teleportation array, and after perfected Xuanqin's modification, it could now teleport 5 people at once. However, each teleportation required 2 top-grade spirit stones. This was still a huge expense for Junling, who was now much richer. In addition, the other end of the teleportation array was located in the territory of the demon race. Therefore, every time Junling used the teleportation array, they were extremely cautious. Although Lu Ping now had 5 or 6 top-grade spirit stones in his hands, he was reluctant to spend them on the teleportation array. This time, in addition to perfected Lu Shenyuan, there were 2 other core forging stage cultivators who came with perfected Lu Shenyuan. The other person was actually perfected Li Nan. After many years of testing, perfected Li Nan was finally accepted as a registered disciple by Guotianshan Laozu. Guotianshan allowed him to return to the North Sea to practice a more complete cultivation method. This was an opportunity for him. Perfected Li Nan was able to rely on an incomplete and not very good cultivation method to cultivate all the way to the 6th layer of core forging. It could be seen that his aptitude, perception, and perseverance were all good. The only thing he lacked was an opportunity. This time, Laozu accepted him as a registered disciple was an opportunity for him to go further. Now that Junling's foundation was far from what it used to be, it was not too difficult to find a suitable cultivation method for him. Of course, for people like perfected Li Nan, even if they became Junling's official disciple, they would not have the opportunity to practice a true cultivation method. However, perfected Li Nan did not have such extravagant hopes. He was already very satisfied to be able to advance to the late core forging stage. However, after perfected Li Nan went to the North Sea this time, he would no longer have the opportunity to return to the Central Plains. This was a rule that Junling had set when Yingshan Immortal Academy was first established. Yingshan Immortal Academy could only be an extension of Junling's influence. All the outstanding disciples it nurtured had to be sent to the North Sea, and Yingshan Immortal Academy could never be controlled by a Central Plains disciple. Perfected Li Nan did not care about this. All he wanted was to improve his cultivation. It did not matter where he went. At this time he was still immersed in the excitement and shock of becoming a disciple of Tianshan Laozu and finding out about Junling. The last place was given to a disciple who had just advanced to the 4th layer of the blood condensation realm. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows. He knew this disciple. He was one of the 3rd layer blood condensation realm disciples who had entered the Fist Valley. Now that he had advanced to the fourth layer of the blood condensation realm, he had the qualifications to become Zhenling's disciple. Hence he was sent back to the North Sea. Lu Ping was a little surprised. Although the Immortal Academy would not let the local disciples take charge, there was no need to send them to the North Sea so quickly. Moreover, the original plan was to send the local disciples to the North Sea once they advanced to the core forging stage. Why was it so urgent now? Chapter 723. Although Lu Ping found it strange, he was just a mid-blood condensation realm minor repairs, so he didn't take it to heart. Instead, perfected Lu Shenyuan pointed at the disciple and said, "Come and greet your uncle Master Shen Ping." The disciple quickly stepped forward and said, "Disciple Sun Zichuan greets Uncle Master Shen Ping." Lu Ping was taken aback, then he smiled and said, "So you've accepted a disciple, senior brother? I was wondering why he wanted to return to the North Sea so quickly. So he's going back with senior brother." Lu Ping didn't mind at first, but after hearing that Sun Zichuan was perfected Lu Xuanyuan's disciple, he took a closer look and smiled. "Your foundation is not bad, and you're cultivating the fifth Earth True Body technique that made Uncle Master Tiankong famous. It's quite similar to senior brother's cultivation technique. No wonder senior brother took a liking to him." As Lu Ping spoke, he took out a jade bottle from his storage artifact and said, "The fifth Earth True Body technique is one of the few techniques in our sect that doesn't have a high requirement to enter the Dharma manifestation realm. However, this technique has a high requirement for the cultivator's physical body. This jade bottle contains a type of spiritual liquid that I concocted many years ago. It's a pity that it's not very useful for core forging cultivators, but it's quite effective for blood condensation cultivators." Lu Ping looked at Sun Zichuan, who was looking at perfected Lu Shenyuan, unsure whether he should accept the gift or not. Lu Ping directly threw the jade bottle into Sun Zichuan's hands and said, "There's a total of 36 drops of spiritual liquid in this bottle. Every time you immerse your entire body in the water, drop 9 drops of spiritual liquid. After 4 times, your physical body will be greatly strengthened, and your cultivation of the fifth Earth True Body technique will definitely be twice the result with half the effort." When enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan heard that Lu Ping's bottle of spiritual liquid could actually strengthen his body, he immediately wanted to reject it. Enlightened Master Li Nan and the others were shocked. However, when they heard that the bottle of spiritual liquid could only be used by blood condensation realm cultivators, they couldn't help but show a regretful expression. Clearly, everyone knew what it meant to strengthen a cultivator's body. Reverend Lu Shenyuan chuckled at Sun Zichuan and said, "If it's someone else giving you a gift, I might have to reject it. However, since it's a gift from your uncle Master Shen Ping, you should just accept it. Otherwise, you'd be letting down his title of Boy of Many Treasures. Your uncle Master's methods aren't something an ordinary person can match up to. Moreover, this bottle of spiritual liquid is indeed very beneficial for your cultivation of the fifth Earth True Body technique." Sun Zichuan hurriedly thanked Lu Ping. Perfected Li Nan was already familiar with Lu Ping's endless methods, so when he heard Sun Zichuan's words, he had a look of agreement. This spiritual liquid was actually a failed product of Lu Ping's attempt to create a new type of spiritual liquid. Originally, he had used the juice of the golden nuts and the spirit demon peaches, and then mixed it with various other plant essences in different proportions. Originally, he had wanted to use it for himself, but it didn't seem to have any effect on him. Instead, he had wasted a golden toughness pill and a spirit demon peach. Fortunately, these things weren't completely wasted. At least they could be used on blood condensation adepts. The tide of Mara had caused a huge disaster to the training world on the north bank of the Yulon River. Many unranked clans had been wiped out by the combined forces of the Azuras and the Shioma demonic cultivators. Even some of the clans that had barely reached the level of a small-scale power had their gates broken through, and countless of their disciples had died. Even mid-sized clans like the Gu clan had lost their Dharma adepts. It was clear to see how terrifying this tide of Mara had been. On the north bank of the Yulon River, the only sect that didn't suffer any losses during the Mara disaster was the spiritual martial sect. After the spiritual martial sect displayed their full strength to the cultivators of Hebei, they no longer hid their strength and bided their time. Instead, they sent messengers to communicate with the Holy Lands, preparing to establish their status as a large sect. Once the spiritual martial sect confirmed their status as a large sect, the spiritual martial sect would be the only large sect in Hebei. According to the rules of the Great Calamity, the entire Middle Earth would be led by the 5 great holy lands to wage a great war against the devil Luo. The various large forces were the spokesmen that the 5 great holy lands used to deploy the various cultivation forces in the Middle Earth. They would receive the full support of the 5 great holy lands, so the spirit martial sect could take this opportunity to clean up the entire Hebei cultivation world and establish their own position in the Hebei cultivation world. The Hebei cultivation world must become a pile of loose sand. Otherwise, if the spiritual martial sect succeeds, then once the Immortal Academy rises, our sect will definitely be suppressed by the combined forces of the various sects under the spiritual martial sect. We might even be suppressed by the 5 holy lands. Then it will be difficult for our sect to establish a foothold in the Middle Earth. Liang Tianfeng Laozu paused for a moment, then continued, the Middle Earth is rich and populous. In just a dozen years, other than the fact that the Immortal Academy's own system is not complete, it has already become self-sufficient in cultivation resources. It has even supported our sect with a batch of spirit herbs and low-grade spirit materials. Our sect must not give up on establishing a sphere of influence in the Middle Earth. Just look at the Crystal Palace and you will know how difficult it is for overseas forces to establish a sphere of influence in the Middle Earth. The Heavenly Moon sect has blocked the Crystal Palace for thousands of years, and one of the 5 holy lands behind the Heavenly Moon sect, the Avalon of 5 Elements, has yet to make a move. One must know that the Crystal Palace is a huge sect that is as famous as the 5 holy lands of the Middle Earth. Therefore the spiritual martial sect must fail this time. Not long after sending off Taoist Master Lu Xianyuan, the various sects in the Hebei cultivation world joined hands to encircle and annihilate Mara was getting closer and closer. Taoist Master Liang Tianfeng, who had been traveling in the Hebei cultivation world for a year, had finally returned. The few Laozu once again sat together to discuss, while Lu Ping, Xian Tian, Xian Bei and Xian Yu, the 4 late-stage core-forging 3rd-generation disciples of Jinling, were also present. Taoist Master Xian Kai had taken over Taoist Master Lu Xuanyuan's position as the Mountain Elder of the Immortal Academy, so she was able to participate. After listening to Liang Tianfeng Laozu's analysis of the situation in the entire Hebei cultivation world, as well as his opinion of the spirit martial sect, Guotianshan Laozu smiled and said, originally, I had planned to let junior brother Chancheng oversee the Immortal Academy. Senior brother Liang and the old man, one in the open and one in the dark, would first plot against the various sects Laozu, causing the various sects to fight against each other. Now it seems that the situation has become even more complicated. Chu Tiancheng Laozu's eyes lit up as he laughed and said, lock the mountain gate tightly, then tighten the mountain gate. After the old man advanced to the Dharma phase, his hands were itchy. This time, it would be good to see the methods of the Dharma phase cultivators of the Central Plains. Liang Tianfeng Laozu also nodded and said, fortunately the other sects, especially the few powerful medium-sized forces, would definitely not want the spirit martial sect to become a large force and be under its control. This is our chance. However, this time we will just muddy the waters and let the various sects and the spirit martial sect fight to the death. It would be best if all the cultivators from other places who came to encircle Mara were also involved. The more chaotic the situation is, the more advantageous it is for us. There are cultivators from other regions participating in the encirclement of Mara? Lu Ping asked in surprise. Among the few 3rd-generation disciples present, only Lu Ping had the right to interrupt the conversation of the 3 Laozu. Liang Tianfeng Laozu smiled and said, that's not surprising. Although it is dangerous to encircle Mara, it is also a great opportunity. You are also someone who has fought with the demonic cultivators and the Shura, so you must have obtained a lot of good things from them, right? Lu Ping thought of the weapons condensed from the essence of the various attributes on the Shura's body, especially the blood Shura of the Dharma phase. Each of their weapons had the power of a spirit treasure, which was obviously a great temptation for the Dharma phase cultivators. Although the blood Shura's weapons had to go through some complicated processes before they could be used by the cultivators, to be able to have a quasi-spirit treasure with him, this time it was all worth it. As for the treasures on the Dharma phase blood demons, Lu Ping only knew about the soul crystal. As for the other things, Lu Ping did not know, because the body of the blood demon that he and Jiang Tianlin Laozu had attacked had been taken away by Jiang Laozu. At this time, Guotianshan Laozu turned to Lu Ping and said, this time the encirclement of Mara was proposed by the spiritual martial sect and the other 5 strongest medium-sized forces, and the 12 small forces in the Hebei cultivation world all responded to it. The Celestial Academy is now one of the 12 small forces in the Hebei cultivation world, so the Celestial Academy will also have to send at least one late core forging adept and one Dharma adept to encircle Mara. That will be the two of us. Beside him, Shintian Jinren said with some surprise, the 18 families will each send one Dharma adept. Doesn't that mean there are 18 Dharma Laozu? Guotianshan Laozu laughed and said, more than that? The 12 small forces will each send one Dharma Laozu, and the 5 medium-sized forces will send one mid-Dharma adept and one early Dharma adept for a total of 2 Laozu. As for the spiritual martial sect, as the main initiator of this operation, there will be 3 Laozus. One of them, a late Dharma adept, Wu Lingfeng, will be the leader of this encirclement of Mara. When everyone heard this lineup, they all gasped. Xianbei Jinren murmured, with a total of 25 Dharma Laozus, what can't they flatten with such a lineup? Liang Tianfeng Laozu looked at his disciple with dissatisfaction and said, you find it hard to believe? Sai, no wonder, it is indeed rare to see such a grand event in the North Sea. However, this does not include those who volunteered to participate in this operation, as well as those who came from other regions. Otherwise, the scale of this operation would be even larger. 3 days later, the Yingshan Immortal Academy announced that they would be sealing their mountain and activating the protective array. They left behind 3 late core forging adepts, Shintian Jinren, Xianbei Jinren, and Xuanyu Jinren to guard the sect. The Mountain Universe sect also sealed their mountain. Chapter 724. The Shura was bloodthirsty and the demonic cultivator devoured souls. In fact, the Shura and the demonic cultivator had another big hobby, and that was spirit devouring. That was why there was a saying in the cultivation world, Mara spirit devouring. Therefore, when the Shura and the demonic cultivator stopped wreaking havoc in the cultivation world and escaped to somewhere far away or gathered in one place, it meant that the place where Mara stayed must have a spirit vein gathering. The higher the number of demonic luos gathered at a location, the higher the quality of the spirit vein there would definitely be. The higher the quality of the spirit vein, the more abundant the cultivation resources produced by the spirit vein would be. There might even be spirit stone veins among them. At the intersection of the Yulon River and the Ying River, the terrain of this area was much lower than the surrounding plains. Every time the flood season of the Yulon River and the Ying River arrived, this area would become the place where the 2 rivers would flood. Over time, this place would become a swamp, and the Yulon River would split into several small streams that flowed into the Yulon River. And after the Shura and demonic cultivators that were wreaking havoc in Hebei were repelled by the cultivators of the various sects, they gathered in groups in this wetland called the Inyu Swamp. This time, the battle for the spirit vein was also one of the goals of the various sects to encircle Mara. Moreover, with so many Shura and demonic cultivators gathered in this swamp, most cultivators believed that there was at least a large spirit vein hidden in this swamp. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many Mara to be attracted to this place. On the 9th of September, the various sects of the Hebei cultivation world gathered outside the Inyu swamp and began to encircle the demonic cultivators and Shura hidden in the swamp. Before this, there were already cultivators continuously gathering towards a small town called Chahi Town outside the swamp. The small town was bustling with noise because most of the Dharma cultivators from the various sects in Hebei would meet at the spiritual martial sect and then head towards the Inyu swamp. Chahi Town had instead become a gathering place for all sorts of rogue cultivators and small groups. After Lu Ping's arrival, many places in the small town had been opened up by the cultivators as a place for private transactions. They were taking advantage of the great movement of the entire Hebei region's cultivation world to exchange for what they needed. Lu Ping was rather interested in this sort of marketplace that was like a marketplace for mortals. With his current knowledge and experience, even ordinary Dharma adepts might not be able to match up to him. Everyone was curious and hoped to pick up some hidden treasures from these marketplaces. Naturally, Lu Ping was no exception. However, Lu Ping was still a little cautious when he looked at the small town in front of him. This kind of trading market was formed spontaneously because there wasn't a strong force presiding over it. Hence, the order was often extremely chaotic. There were even cases of people turning against each other and refusing to acknowledge their debts. Here, strength was often the key. Lu Ping laughed involuntarily. Although he was alone and in the eyes of outsiders, he might be an easy target to bully, but with his current strength, as long as it was not a Dharma adept, he would not care about 3 to 5 ordinary late core forging adepts. If there really was someone who did not open his eyes, he would just send them away. This was because most of the cultivators here were prepared to follow after Laozu and enter the Inyu swamp to take advantage of the situation. However, the Inyu swamp was filled with danger. The danger inside was not only from Mara, but also from the ferocious beasts and even demons hidden in the swamp. Therefore, this spontaneous marketplace was mostly filled with all sorts of healing, recovery, and antidotes. There were also all sorts of treasures, talismans, and other items that could temporarily increase a cultivator's strength. Of course, there were also all sorts of other cultivation items, but compared to these two there were far fewer. Before the Inyu swamp was occupied by Mara, it had been a buffer zone between the human race and the Yulon River demon race. There were many ferocious beasts that had yet to gain sentience but were extremely powerful. There were even rumors that the spirit-taming sex cultivators had once appeared in the Inyu swamp. However, the Inyu swamp was also a treasure trove. Throughout the years, it had attracted a large number of adventuring cultivators in search of various cultivation resources. This time, the North Sea's cultivation world had entered the Inyu swamp on a large scale. In addition to encircling Mara and searching for the large spirit veins and cultivation resources Mara had occupied, another important reason was to completely occupy the Inyu swamp and expel the demon race's forces, turning it into the territory of Hebei's cultivation world. Lu Ping casually strolled through the small town, inspecting the various stalls set up on both sides of the road. Naturally, there were very few items that caught Lu Ping's attention. Although there were a few items that Lu Ping felt were worth it, there were also a few stocks of thousand-year-old spiritual herbs and top-grade spiritual materials. Although they had been mistaken as low prices, Lu Ping would not take advantage of them. At this moment, Lu Ping's face showed a hint of helplessness. He looked around and found that no one was paying attention to him. Then he walked towards a remote corner of the town. After a while, when Lu Ping came out again, he was followed by two excited young girls. On Lu Ping's shoulder was a fat mid-stage blood condensation realm rat demon. These two young girls were Lu Taohua and Lu Qiner. Lu Qiner had always been a lawless person. She couldn't bear the loneliness of staying in the House of Gold for a long time. Lu Taohua, on the other hand, had never seen the prosperity of the human world. She was tempted by Lu Qiner's words, so she wanted to come out and take a look. Although Lu Ping was helpless, he didn't want his spirit pet to be a canary in a cage. He could only let the two of them play behind him. However, to prevent their identities from being leaked, especially Lu Qiner's identity as a spirit demon, Lu Ping gave them 2 demon transformation chakrams. The magical thing about the demon transformation chakram was that when a transformed demon cultivator wore it, they wouldn't be exposed. When a human cultivator wore it, the demon cultivator would think that they were the same kind. Lu Ping originally had 3 demon transformation chakrams, but Jiang Tianlin took one from him when he left the North Sea. It was said that his teacher Lu Tianling wanted to use it. Lu Ping naturally didn't dare to neglect it, so he only had 2 left. Lu Qiner and Lu Qiner played with Debao in the small town. When they saw so many cultivators setting up stalls and selling all kinds of items, they couldn't help but become interested. They focused all their attention on the stalls on both sides of the street. Lu Ping followed behind the 3 of them and let them play. He also wanted to take the opportunity to test their knowledge. The cultivators setting up stalls around were all people with good taste. When they saw that Lu Ping was following behind them calmly and didn't point out anything, they all thought that Lu Qiner and Lu Qiner were rich young ladies who went out to play. They secretly thought that they might be a fat sheep, so they all called them over to their stalls to have a look and encouraged them to buy all kinds of cultivation items from their stalls. Unexpectedly, the 2 sisters were so easy to fool. Although Lu Qiner was the strongest in terms of cultivation techniques, she was the worst in terms of knowledge. However, she had followed Lu Ping for a long time and had seen a lot of things. Lu Qiner had been in human form for 10 years and took care of the spiritual herb garden for Lu Ping. Lu Ping had given her a lot of ancient books about spiritual herbs. In addition, she was a spiritual peach tree, so she was naturally able to distinguish between good and bad spiritual herbs. There was no need to mention Debao. Debao had been with Lu Ping for the longest time and was also the most trusted by Lu Ping. He had seen most of the treasures Lu Ping obtained. Therefore, it could be said that among all of Lu Ping's spiritual pets, Debao's strength was the worst, but his knowledge was the best. Many cultivators tried to pass off some things as high-grade items, but they were all exposed by Lu Qiner and the others on the spot, making these people embarrassed. There were also those who flew into a rage out of humiliation. However, before they could vent their anger, Lu Qiner's aura surged and her mid-core forging cultivation erupted. Many of the surrounding cultivators who were jeering shut their mouths. It was not that no one could deal with Lu Qiner, but how old did Lu Qiner look? At such a young age she had such an amazing cultivation. If she didn't have a tyrannical background, who would believe it? At this time, everyone remembered that Lu Ping was following behind this little sister, but he didn't speak. When they swept him with their divine sense, they found that the person in front of them was like a boundless sea. They couldn't see the bottom and only felt that he was unfathomable. Everyone put away their thoughts of deceiving them and began to introduce some valuable things to the two of them. This time Lu Qiner couldn't distinguish them. However, although Lu Qiner couldn't distinguish them, there was little Peach Blossom next to her. Although Lu Taohua hadn't been in human form for long, she could keep her heart. She had been in human form for 10 years. On weekdays she took care of Lu Ping's spiritual grass garden and read some ancient books on spiritual plants collected by Lu Ping. In addition, Lu Taohua was a spirit beast in human form, so she was very sensitive to spiritual materials such as plants. Since she didn't know something, she could distinguish between good and bad through her qi talent. After a few rounds of negotiation, not only did Lu Taohua not lose out, but she also picked up a lot of things. For example, she mistook a 1,000-year-old spiritual grass for a 500-year-old one, and some spiritual grass that were very similar but had opposite medicinal properties. She could even distinguish between some spiritual materials such as plants. If there was something that even Lu Taohua couldn't identify, then it would be Debao's time to perform. However, Debao was only a mid-blood condensation demon beast that hadn't transformed yet, so he didn't dare to openly appraise these items. He only secretly transmitted his voice to Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua. The two of them walked half a street and even picked up a few 3,000-year-old spiritual grass. However, Lu Qiner was a talkative person. She didn't keep it to herself and instead showed off proudly. This made the cultivators who sold the spiritual grass to them very depressed. If it weren't for the fact that they were afraid of the two beautiful girls in front of them, these people might have beaten them up on the street and taught them a lesson. Lu Ping looked at the two of them and smiled bitterly. Although the cultivators who were picked up by the two of them seemed to have admitted defeat, Lu Ping didn't think that these people would give up just like that. Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua had made dozens of transactions along the way and spent hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. This kind of wealth was enough to make people want to take the risk. Lu Ping wasn't afraid of these people. He just found it troublesome. However, looking at the two girls' excited expressions, Lu Ping didn't have the heart to interrupt them. Chapter 725. Although Lu Ping had seen thousands of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs in the Fist Valley, and although the Central Plains was much richer than the North Sea, 3,000-year-old spirit herbs were considered treasures to any cultivator. For those core forging and blood condensation cultivators, their value was even higher. With Debao's help, Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua actually managed to pick up a dozen 3,000-year spirit herbs from the pile of miscellaneous items. For those blood condensation realm cultivators and early core forging realm cultivators who thought they were 1,000-year or even 500-year spirit herbs, this was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. The corners of their eyes twitched uncontrollably. A few cultivators who seemed to be a group, slowly followed behind the two little girls. Although the two little girls' cultivation bases were not low, these people were obviously used to sneak attacks. Clearly, they were not afraid of some rookie cultivators who were stronger than them but had underestimated the dangers of the cultivation world. As for the forces behind them, they were originally rogue cultivators who had fled to the ends of the earth. After doing this, who could do anything to them? However, to be these two girls, the young man behind them was an eyesore. Flower protector? Although they couldn't see through his cultivation level, the disciples of these large forces had a lot of treasures on them. Moreover, they were often people with high standards but low abilities. It was a good opportunity to do this business together. However, before these people could surround Lu Ping inadvertently coughed twice. Suddenly these people stopped in their tracks. Their eyes suddenly popped out, and then they stood motionlessly in the middle of the street. The five of them had originally formed a semicircle around Lu Ping and were slowly moving towards him from behind. Previously they didn't notice the crowd on the street, but now that the five of them had suddenly stopped in the middle of the street, they blocked most of the street. Hey, don't block the way. What are you standing here for? Sir, please move aside. I have urgent matters to attend to. The five cultivators continued to ignore him. As a temporary gathering point for the cultivators from Hebei province to charge into Rich Jade Swamp, the number of cultivators gathered here was not small. In just a moment, over 20 cultivators were blocked in the middle of the street. Most of these cultivators were rogue cultivators. They might not be strong, but they were ferocious enough. Otherwise, how could they have survived until now? Those who made a living on the edge of a knife would have killed a few people, and how many of them were good-tempered? Someone immediately started cursing, and a few hot-tempered ones pushed the 5 of them. Plop. Thump. This is... The 5 of them were pushed to the ground almost at the same time. Only then did everyone realize that something was wrong with the 5 of them. Their eyes were wide open and protruding, and their ears were bleeding. Were they dead? The onlookers immediately felt a chill run down their spines. These 5 people had obviously been ambushed at the same time while walking on the street, but the way they died was too strange. How could they suddenly die in an instant? There were quite a few experts among the onlookers, but they knew that with their own abilities, they would definitely not be able to do this. Some of the more observant people immediately realized that the position where the 5 of them had been standing before seemed to be secretly surrounding and ambushing someone. However, it was clear that they had kicked an iron plate and lost their lives in the process. Some quick-witted people immediately thought of the 2 girls who had caused a sensation on the street just now. Could it be that these 5 people wanted to rob those 2 girls, but were killed by them without batting an eyelid? In the distance on the street, there were still quite a few cultivators who had set up stalls, eagerly greeting the 2 girls. Although these 2 girls had vicious eyes, they were generous. As long as they took a look at something, they would basically be able to pay a reasonable price. Of course, if the cultivators who set up the stalls were blind and sold a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb as a 500-year-old spiritual herb, they would naturally be happy to take advantage of it. There were quite a few people who had ideas about the 2 girls. However, after seeing the fate of these 5 people, they decisively gave up on their previous thoughts. When a knowledgeable cultivator saw the 5 people who had fallen to the ground, he was immediately surprised and said, "Aya, isn't this the 5 tigers of Mount Xing? The Spirit Martial Sect has offered a bounty of 1,000,000 spirit stones and 3 spirit communication magic treasures to take the lives of these 5 people. How could they die on the streets and not want the bounty of the Spirit Martial Sect? What? These are the 5 notorious bandits of the 5 tigers of Mount Xing? Aya, that's true. How could he die here? The strength of 5 middle-stage core forging cultivators. Some of the people who had ulterior motives were even more terrified. These 5 tigers of Mount Xing were quite famous existences among the rogue cultivators of the core forging stage in the Hebei cultivation world. Legend has it that each of these 5 people had reached the middle stage of the core forging stage, and the leader had even reached the peak of the 5th level of the core forging stage. These 5 people had been doing some business in the Hebei cultivation world all year round, causing many forces in the Hebei cultivation world to want to get rid of them. Unfortunately, these 5 people were not weak. The 5 of them had a set of joint attacks. They were also extremely cunning. Their whereabouts were erratic. As a result, they had been free and unfettered in the Hebei cultivation world for many years. Legend has it that these 5 people even had the lives of 3 late-stage core forging cultivators in their hands. Among them, the 5 of them were the most proud of secretly killing a late-stage core forging cultivator of the Spirit Martial Sect. This provoked the Spirit Martial Sect to issue a bounty for the lives of these 5 people. However, for several years these 5 people were still at large. However, they had restrained themselves a lot. The Hebei cultivation world had rarely heard of these 5 people. Originally, some people thought that these 5 people had already hidden outside of the Hebei cultivation world. They didn't expect that these 5 people would appear here. Furthermore, they appeared in front of everyone in such a way. The streets were bustling with cultivators. There were hundreds of them if not thousands. There was no lack of hidden dragons and crouching tigers among them. To be able to avoid these cultivators and quietly kill these 5 people, this kind of method was not something that the onlookers could hope to achieve. Could it be the young man in green behind the 2 girls? When some of the more knowledgeable people saw the bodies of these 5 people, they guessed that after their divine will was forcefully destroyed, they lost control of the inner yuan in their bodies and died from squeezing out of the core space. And to be able to destroy the divine will of 5 mid-stage core forging cultivators in one go, what kind of cultivation level was this person at? The Dharma stage? It seemed that even a normal Dharma stage cultivator could not achieve such an effect. Some of the scouts from the major forces looked at the back of the figure in green in the distance, their eyes faintly revealing a hint of awe. To have the strength of the Dharma stage at such a young age, what kind of giant was behind him? What kind of identity did the 2 little girls have to be able to have Dharma stage cultivators as bodyguards? Lu Ping's divine will swept behind him and swept past his surroundings. He found that the divine will that was spying on him and Lu Qin'er had suddenly disappeared. Lu Ping's face revealed a trace of a smile. At this time he heard someone behind him shout, "That's not right, who took the 5 tigers of Xingshan's storage artifacts? Hurry up and hand them over." The 5 tigers of Xingshan usually do business without any capital. They must have accumulated a lot of good things in their hands. Which damned person took it away without saying a word? It was on me just now. How do you know it was still on you just now? Nonsense, I have been watching for a long time. Stop talking nonsense. Since the people who killed them don't want them, first cut off the heads of these 5 people and go to the spirit martial sect to collect the reward. This head is mine. Get lost. On the other side of the street, Lu Ping took 5 storage artifacts from the mouth of Debao, who had just drilled out of the ground. After opening it, he casually looked at it and threw 4 of them to Debao. The remaining one seemed to be used by the leader of the 5 tigers of Xingshan. Lu Ping rummaged through it for a while and then took out a map. On it was a map of the lush jade swamp, but it was clearly not complete. However, Lu Ping did not plan to enter the lush jade swamp with the cultivators of the other sections. Since that was the case, with this incomplete map in hand, it could save Lu Ping a lot of energy. It seemed that after the 5 tigers of Xingshan killed the cultivators of the spirit martial sect, they hid in the lush jade swamp and even built a secret cave in the swamp. It was because of this secret cave that the 5 of them escaped the massacre after Mara entered the lush jade swamp. The reason why the 5 tigers of Xingshan took the risk to enter the lush jade swamp again was for the secret cave that the 5 of them had opened in the swamp. Looking at the mark on the map that marked the secret cave of the 5 people, Lu Ping thought to himself, no matter what, I have a place to stay. At this moment, Lu Ping frowned and looked in the direction of Lu Qin'er and Lu Taohua. At this moment, the 2 of them were standing in front of a stall and seemed to be arguing with the cultivator who set up the stall. Lu Ping walked forward and did not wait for him to ask the 2 of them what happened. When he saw the person who set up the stall, Lu Ping's expression inevitably became serious. When the person who set up the stall saw Lu Ping, his eyes couldn't help but narrow. Then, as if nothing had happened, he continued to bargain with Lu Qin'er and Lu Taohua. This person's aura is so strange. The person who set up the stall was an unkempt man. This cultivator had obviously concealed his aura, making it impossible to see how strong he was. However, the moment Lu Ping saw this cultivator, he sharply caught a trace of his aura. Uncle, although your mystical item is not bad, the item that Sister Qina used to exchange for it is also extraordinary. You should know that Sister Qin took out an elixir for a half-step Dharma adept. Uncle, you are a late core forging adept, right? Perhaps this elixir can heal your injuries. When the surrounding cultivators heard that this young girl was holding a half-step transcendent stage pill in her hand, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The cultivator who set up the stall was an unkempt man with a sallow face. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious internal injury. There were a few items on display in the stall. Although there weren't many items from Lu Ping's point of view, these items were quite valuable. This unkempt man was using these items on the ground to exchange for a few pills that could heal the injuries of late core forging cultivators. Among the items was a 1-foot-tall glass bottle filled with a brown liquid. This was the treasure that Lu Qin'er had her eyes on previously. She had intended to exchange a bottle of healing pills that Lu Ping had refined for a half-step transcendent stage pill. Unexpectedly, this man suddenly changed his mind. Naturally, Lu Qin'er was unwilling, so they argued. When Lu Ping looked at the brown liquid in the glass bottle, his eyes narrowed. It was a mystical item like the green jade glass liquid. Qin'er could only tell that it was a water-based mystical item, but she didn't know that it was as rare as the 10,000 poison liquid. Like the growing soil, it was a high-grade mystical item. Using a bottle of a half-step transcendent stage pill to exchange for it was indeed a little low. Chapter 726. Lu Ping had already condensed 7 layers of Vigor Qi. Aside from the myriad poison liquid, which was a high-grade Vigor Qi, the other 6 heaven and earth oddities were all in the mid to low-grade range. The green jade glass liquid was a high-grade heaven and earth oddity similar to the myriad poison liquid. It was extremely rare in the cultivation world, and cultivators who could use it were few and far between. The sloppy man wasn't afraid that someone would see through his disguise when he took out the cyan jade glazed liquid. However, most cultivators who could see through the cyan jade glazed liquid were knowledgeable cultivators with profound cultivation. Only these cultivators would have the item that the sloppy man needed. However, he didn't expect that the cyan jade glazed liquid would be seen through by a core forging cultivator. Looking at the spirit pill in Lu Qiner's hand, the sloppy man's heart was filled with joy. He didn't expect that although this little girl's cultivation was low, she would have such a high-grade spirit pill. Although it wasn't enough to completely heal his injuries, it would still be of great benefit. The situation was urgent and this spirit pill was urgently needed. Even if it couldn't compare to the green jade glass liquid, he couldn't care less. However, just as the sloppy man was about to agree, his eyes suddenly narrowed. A cold light flashed and he stared at Lu Qiner's hand that was holding the spirit pill. At this moment, the sloppy man suddenly felt an incomparably tyrannical aura flash past him. He was startled, and when he turned to look, he happened to see Lu Ping casually glancing at him. Although the sloppy man was puzzled, he became even more vigilant. At this moment, Lu Taohua, who was next to Lu Qiner, saw that the sloppy man's face was previously filled with eagerness, but in the blink of an eye he became silent. She thought that he was trying to raise the price. Naturally, she was unwilling and opened her mouth to speak. When the sloppy man turned to look at Lu Taohua, he saw that she was pointing at the green jade glass liquid and was saying something. He subconsciously looked at Lu Taohua's outstretched hand and his pupils shrank again. "Two young ladies, if you are interested in the spirit liquid in this bottle, it is not impossible to exchange it." The sloppy man pondered for a moment and seemed to have made up his mind. He smiled at Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua. At this time, Lu Ping had already recognized the green jade glass liquid. However, he did not think that Lu Qiner would recognize such an extremely rare heaven and earth wonder. Lu Ping looked at Debao, who was at his feet. It was very likely that Debao had discovered the uniqueness of the spirit liquid in the bottle, but he did not know what kind of spirit liquid it was. After Lu Qiner found out about it, she naturally wanted to exchange it. She did not even hesitate to take out the life-saving spirit pill that Lu Ping had given her. After Lu Ping's chi of vigor had been refined to the 7th layer, he had not been able to find a suitable spirit liquid. Therefore he had not made any progress for many years. Lu Qiner was naturally aware of this. She had taken out the best spirit pill she had on hand in order to exchange for the spirit liquid and give it to Lu Ping to refine his chi of vigor. Lu Ping could not help but smile. This little girl had actually learned to care about others. However, the green jade glass liquid was extremely precious. Although the spirit pill that Lu Qiner had taken out was also extraordinary, it could not be compared to this high-grade heaven and earth wonder. When Lu Qiner heard the sloppy man in front of her, she actually calmed down and said in a deep voice, "What do you want in exchange?" The sloppy man looked at Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua's wrists again with a playful smile on his face. Then his eyes inadvertently flashed with a green light and he said, "I see that the jade bracelets on your wrists are quite good. If you two are willing to part with them, you can take this bottle of spirit liquid." When Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua heard that the person in front of them wanted the bracelets on their wrists, their expressions suddenly changed. The two shook their wrists at the same time and used their sleeves to conceal the bracelets on their wrists. As a result, it had the effect of revealing the truth. When the surrounding cultivators saw the two of them acting like this, they were even more certain that the bracelets of the two were most likely extraordinary treasures. One after another, they spread their spiritual sense over, intending to see what was going on. Although Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua were also core forging cultivators, when faced with the probing of so many cultivators with powerful divine senses, they were unable to resist for a while. The bracelets on their wrists were quickly discovered by the divine senses of others. "What is this thing? Why haven't I seen it before? It doesn't look like a magic treasure. There aren't any true essence fluctuations coming from it. There aren't even any spiritual chi fluctuations. Why would this sloppy man want something like this? Hee, it can't be that this man saw these two beautiful young ladies and had some thoughts about them, right?" Lu Qiner could still be considered calm. She fiercely glared at the sloppy man and grabbed Lu Taohua, who was at a loss. She said, "We're not buying it. Little sister, let's go." The sloppy man saw that Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua were about to turn around and did not stop them. Instead, he looked behind them with a serious expression. When Lu Ping saw the green light in the sloppy man's eyes, he knew that he was in trouble. When he squeezed through the crowd and arrived in front of the two, the divine senses of the surrounding cultivators had already broken through their respective divine senses. Fortunately, the people around them did not know what Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua were wearing on their wrists. Lu Ping looked coldly at the sloppy man in front of him. Then a cold aura suddenly exploded from his body. A strong divine sense swept out and drove away all the divine senses in the surroundings. Many cultivators let out muffled groans and their faces turned pale. However, they looked at Lu Ping with fear in their eyes. They did not dare to criticize Lu Ping's actions. Lu Ping looked at the sloppy man in front of him and said, "Although the injury of the blood vessels only affects part of the blood vessels, if it is not healed in a short period of time in the future, one's cultivation will slowly decline and it will no longer be possible to advance to the Dharma phase." When the sloppy man heard Lu Ping's words, his body trembled. He looked up and said, "Your Excellency is an alchemy master?" The surrounding cultivators were originally awed by Lu Ping's power. Although they did not dare to say anything about his domineering divine senses, they were very dissatisfied in their hearts. However, when they heard the sloppy man in front of them said that this person was actually an alchemy master, the noisy scene suddenly quieted down. The sloppy man's previous laziness suddenly disappeared a lot. He pondered for a moment and said, "These two little girls have a good relationship with Your Excellency, right? I was rash before. I wonder if Your Excellency has a way to heal my injuries. If Your Excellency can heal them, why not give this bottle of spiritual water to Your Excellency?" Lu Ping glanced at the two little girls beside him, then looked at the sloppy man with a smile but didn't say anything. The sloppy man suddenly came to a realization and a strong fluctuation of spiritual qi erupted from his body. Many of the surrounding cultivators turned pale with fright and quickly moved out of the way. They saw him form a few hand seals and a soundproof restriction immediately surrounded him and Lu Ping's group of three. Lu Ping was slightly surprised when the sloppy man's aura erupted. However, he soon discovered that the person's true essence circulation was obscure. Although it could erupt for a short period of time, it could not be sustained for a long period of time. It was obvious that the damage to his bloodline was more serious than he had imagined. The smile on Lu Ping's face became even wider. The sloppy cultivator looked at the smile on Lu Ping's face and his expression became somewhat silent. After laying down the soundproof restriction, he looked at Lu Ping and said, "The demon transformation bracelet?" Lu Ping's expression became even more certain and he also said, "The Spirit Beast Sect." The sloppy cultivator didn't see the change in Lu Ping's expression as he expected. Instead, Lu Ping had guessed his origins. The sloppy cultivator was stunned for a moment before bursting into hearty laughter and said, "So you really do have a relationship with my Spirit Beast Sect? I wonder where Your Excellency obtained the demon transformation bracelet from? It is rarely seen in my sect." A faint smile appeared on Lu Ping's face and he said, "If Your Excellency's relationship is only with these two demon transformation bracelets, isn't it a bit far-fetched?" The sloppy cultivator didn't mind and turned to look at Lu Ping who was glaring at him from Lu Qiner's side and said, "The Wan clan. Could it be that Your Excellency is from overseas?" Without waiting for Lu Ping to answer, he looked at Lu Taohua on the other side and said, "This young lady is very strange. I am unable to see through her origins. However, since she is wearing the demon transformation bracelet on her wrist, I assume she is not from the human clan." When Lu Qiner heard that the sloppy cultivator had guessed that Lu Ping came from overseas through her, her heart thumped. However, Lu Ping pointed at DeBeo on the ground and said with a smile, "I also have a spiritual pet. I wonder if Your Excellency will think that I am from the Middle Earth after seeing it? I have long heard that the Spirit Beast Sect has a secret technique that specializes in seeing through one's origins called the Green Jade Spirit Eyes. Seeing it today, it is indeed worthy of its reputation. However, with Your Excellency's current state, how long can you maintain this technique for?" The two of them revealed each other's identity in a few words. Lu Ping was calm and unruffled, while the sloppy cultivator was at a disadvantage because of his hidden injuries. Now that he had a request for Lu Ping's help, he couldn't help but be at a disadvantage. The cultivator cupped his hands towards Lu Ping and said, "I have experienced Your Excellency's methods. May I ask if Your Excellency is confident in treating my injuries?" Without waiting for Lu Ping to speak, the sloppy cultivator continued, "I have also consulted several alchemists. There is no lack of them like Your Excellency, but they all said that my injuries can be alleviated and controlled, but it is extremely difficult to treat. If Your Excellency is confident in treating my injuries, please feel free to take this green jade glass liquid." Lu Ping pondered for a moment. He really coveted the bottle of green jade glass liquid, but he still cautiously asked, "The Spirit Beast Sect has a long heritage. It is said that their heritage is not inferior to the 5 sacred lands. Could it be that your sect does not have a sacred alchemist who can treat my injuries?" The sloppy cultivator helplessly said, "My spirit beast sect cultivators travel the world. Although we have fellow sect members, time cannot be delayed." "To be honest, Your Excellency, my injuries are much more serious than they were 2 days ago. Right now, I am only holding on to a sliver of luck in this small town." Lu Ping looked at the green jade glass liquid on the ground and nodded, saying, "I am confident in treating your injuries. However, in addition to Your Excellency's green jade glass liquid, I will need something else." Chapter 727. When the slovenly cultivator heard that Lu Ping had other requests, his expression immediately changed. "Don't you think you're pushing your luck? Since you recognize the green jade glass liquid, you should know how precious it is. Is it not worth exchanging it for a spirit pill?" Lu Ping laughed involuntarily and said, "You must be joking. Right now, you're facing a situation where your cultivation base is about to be destroyed. Are you really going to give up your cultivation base for a bottle of spirit liquid? Besides, after you were injured, you didn't go to any of the large sects to ask for help. Instead, you hid in a remote place like this. There must be a reason, right? Otherwise, with your identity as a cultivator from the spirit-taming sect, those sects would have to give you some face. Why would you come to this small town?" The slovenly cultivator's face turned red with anger, but he couldn't say anything. He had come to the Abundance Jade Swamp with a purpose, but he didn't expect to suffer such a great loss as soon as he entered the swamp. He had almost been crippled by a sinister technique. The cultivation world of Hebei has sent a large force to hunt down Mara in the Abundance Jade Swamp. This small town is the key to entering and exiting the Abundance Jade Swamp, so it will definitely become a gathering place for cultivators. I stopped here to find someone who can treat my injuries. In fact, didn't I wait until you found me?" Lu Ping calmly replied, "That's a reasonable reason, but your injuries are not ordinary. Although the spirit pellet you need isn't a high-grade one, the method to concoct such a spirit pellet is extremely rare. I'm sure the alchemist you met before must have explained to you how troublesome your injuries are." The slovenly cultivator coldly snorted, but there was a look of helplessness on his face. Lu Ping's guess was not wrong. He had come to the Abundance Jade Swamp for an extremely important matter that could not be delayed. However, he didn't expect to suffer such a strange injury from the very beginning. Now he had no choice but to compromise with Lu Ping. As such, he asked, "What do you want?" "Spirit connecting pills. 10 spirit clearing pills." Lu Ping had a deep impression of the clear spirit pill that Tian Shui Laozu had given to the amethyst wasp King Zilan to consume in the past. This kind of unique medicinal pill of the Imperial Beast sect could be said to be famous in the cultivation world. For any spiritual pet, the clear spirit pill's effect was not inferior to the spiritual forging pill. "Spirit clearing pill? 10. Don't even think about it." The sloppy cultivator's face flushed red. "This kind of pill is rare even in our sect. Which of the materials needed to refine this kind of pill aren't heavenly materials and earthly treasures of the cultivation world? Not to mention 10 spirit clearing pills, I don't even have one." Lu Ping did not expect the other party to have such a huge reaction after hearing that he wanted spirit clearing pills. Thinking back to the time when Tian Shui Laozu had obtained 3 spirit clearing pills, she had kept them for hundreds of years without using a single one. Even when Tian Lu Laozu had begged repeatedly, it was useless. It was only until Lu Ping's Amethyst Wasp King advanced to the core forging realm and brewed a higher grade royal jelly did Tian Shui Laozu give one to Lu Ping. From the looks of it, this spirit clearing pill was no small matter in the Imperial Beast sect. As Lu Ping pondered, he said, "A straightforward person does not beat around the bush. With your strength, I believe that you must have some spirit clearing pills on you. I will not ask for it for free. I will use something to exchange for it. How about one?" The reason why Lu Ping was so sure that this person in front of him had some spirit-clearing pills was because when Tian Shui Laozu was roaming the Central Plains, she had met a core forging realm cultivator from the Imperial Beast sect. Furthermore, when Lu Ping saw the person in front of him, he discovered that although this person's cultivation was only at the 8th layer of the core forging realm, his strength was much stronger than the likes of enlightened Jian Ming and enlightened Fei Hong. Even enlightened Gu Hun, who had quite a high position in the Gu clan, could not be compared to this person. With such strength, this person would definitely be one of the future Transcendence Realm cultivators in the Imperial Beast sect. With the sect's care, how could he not have some good items on him? As expected, after thinking for a while, the other party's face turned green and red before he said, I do have a few spirit-clearing pills on me. However, if you want 10 of them, this deal will not go through. At most, I will give you 3. Furthermore, I need the demon transformation bracelets from these 2 young ladies. Lu Ping was puzzled. Why do you need the demon transformation bracelet? Isn't this item unique to the Imperial Beast sect? The other party glanced at Lu Ping but did not speak. Seeing that the other party was not willing to speak, Lu Ping said awkwardly, "This demon transformation bracelet is of great use to me, but I cannot give it to you. I wonder if there is anything else that you need? I only need 7 spirit-clearing pills." The sloppy cultivator looked at Lu Ping and said, "Do you really have a spirit pill that can quickly heal my injuries?" Lu Ping smiled faintly and said, "The strange thing about your injury is that your broken meridians seem to be mending but not mending. If you use an ordinary medicinal pellet, once the medicinal energy surges through your meridians, the meridians that seem to have a sliver of hope of recovery will rupture and your cultivation base will be destroyed. Although your injury isn't fatal, if it is delayed, even if you don't lose your cultivation base, you will still be paralyzed and your cultivation base will be greatly reduced." The sloppy cultivator's face darkened. "Since I cannot withstand the medicinal effect, how can I treat it?" Lu Ping said unhurriedly, "You mentioned earlier that you have consulted a few alchemy grandmasters. I wonder if they have mentioned to you that there is a spirit water alchemy technique in the cultivation world?" The sloppy cultivator's expression suddenly became excited. "You know this technique? Do you know what kind of pill can be refined using this technique to heal my injuries?" Sure enough, the sloppy cultivator had heard of this alchemy technique. However, although the alchemist who told him about this technique knew of its existence, he only guessed that it could be used to cure this kind of injury. As for what kind of spirit pill would be refined with this technique, even the alchemist didn't know. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. The cultivation world of the Central Plains was not like the overseas world. Many alchemy masters in the overseas world had never even heard of the spirit water alchemy technique, let alone believed in it. Only a few knowledgeable alchemy grandmasters had heard of it, but that was all they had heard of. Lu Ping flipped his wrist and a jade bottle appeared in his hand. He took out a grape-sized pill and said, "This pill is called the Spirit Water Meridian Nourishing Pill. It is the most effective for your injuries." With that said, Lu Ping infused his true essence into the spirit core and a water elemental aura emerged from the spirit core's surface. The sloppy cultivator immediately sensed the unique spirituality of the spirit core. Lu Ping saw that the sloppy cultivator's expression relaxed. It was obvious that he knew how to differentiate the pill refined using the spirit water alchemy technique. However, he waited until now to say it. He was clearly a cautious person. The sloppy cultivator cupped his hands at Lu Ping and asked in a serious tone, "I am Sang Yu. How should I address you?" Lu Ping returned the greeting and said, "I am Lu Ping. Greetings, Brother Sang." The sloppy cultivator, Sang Yu, exchanged the green jade glazed liquid in his hand with Lu Ping's spirit water meridian nourishing pill. Then he said, "Brother Lu, the spirit clearing pill is indeed very important to our sect. I can only take out 3 pills. This is also the sect's rule. After all, this pill is not easy to refine. However, if Brother Lu wants these pills, you must help me with something. I know that Brother Lu is very strong. Although you are only at the 8th layer of core forging, I fear that even a 9th layer core forging cultivator is no match for you. If Brother Lu is willing to help me with this matter, I will definitely give you 3 spirit clearing pills." Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't blindly agree just for 3 spirit clearing pills. Instead, he asked in a serious tone, "What do you need me to do?" "I will be entering the lush jade swamp with the sect's elders in the next few days to participate in the encirclement of Mara. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it in time." Sang Yu sensed the spirit water meridian nourishing pill's aura and knew that it was indeed effective. His previously gloomy expression had long since disappeared. Hearing Lu Ping's words, he laughed and said, "Brother Lu, rest assured. What I want to do will also happen in the lush jade swamp. Brother Lu only needs to find an excuse to move alone in the Central Plains for a period of time. Last time, I was harmed by a vile person and gave up halfway. I even suffered a strange injury. This time, with Brother Lu's help, my chances of success will greatly increase. Of course, regardless of whether I succeed or not, I will definitely give you 3 spirit-clearing pills." Lu Ping pondered for a moment before nodding and saying, "All right, I agree to this. However, where will I meet up with Brother Sang after entering the lush jade swamp?" Sang Yu handed a jade slip to Lu Ping and said, "This is a map of the lush jade swamp. The place where we will meet up is marked on the map. The cultivators of the various sects in Hebei will most likely enter the lush jade swamp tomorrow. It's hard to say whether they will succeed or not, but the lush jade swamp is vast and boundless. Without several months, it will be impossible to complete this operation. It just so happens that I will need a month to recover from my injuries. In that case, let's meet up at the appointed place in a month. Lu Ping nodded and was about to lead Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua away when he heard Sang Yu say, "Brother Lu, don't blame me for not warning you. This operation to encircle Mara in Hebei will most likely be far more complicated than you can imagine. As a cultivator of the spirit-taming sect, we have heard quite a few things. Not only will the various sects in Hebei have their own plans for this operation, but the cultivators of the south bank of the Yulon River, the cultivators of the plains downstream of the Yulon River, as well as the cultivators of the highlands upstream have all heard of the news. In addition, the monsters of the Yulon River have also appeared in the swamp. The waters here are very deep." Lu Ping thanked Sang Yu and turned to leave. Sang Yu stared at Lu Ping's back and muttered to herself, "Strange. What exactly is the background of that little girl? How is it that even my Jasper spirit eyes, which has condensed a 7th-level spiritual object, couldn't see through her? On the other hand, that Luan and that spirit-seeking mouse on the ground are quite interesting. The Luan clearly has the attributes of both wind and fire. How could the Fire Luan race, which has always prided themselves on their pure bloodline, tolerate such an unusual existence? That spirit-seeking mouse is even more strange." Although it has displayed a mid-stage blood condensation cultivation, which is already very commendable for a low-level spirit-seeking mouse, it seems that this mouse has been sealed by some special method. I still can't see through it. This person's methods are really hard to fathom. Could it be that the spirit-seeking mouse's cultivation is even higher? Sang Yu pondered for a moment, but still couldn't come up with an answer. She continued to murmur to herself, "It seems that after this mission is completed, I might as well make friends with this person. It's fine if it's just a few strange spiritual pets, but the most commendable thing is that none of his spiritual pets have been sealed off. They are still free. This will be able to win the goodwill of the spirit-taming sect." Chapter 728. After the incident with Sang Yu, Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua were no longer in the mood to continue shopping. They followed Lu Ping to find a clean inn to stay in. However, there were no spirit veins in this small town, and the spirit qi in the air was thin. Moreover, there were thousands of practitioners of different levels in the town, so there was no room for people to train. Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua informed Lu Ping of their plans and returned to the House of Gold. The fact that the practitioners of the spirit beast taming sect could see through Lu Qiner's real body with the demon transformation bracelet reminded Lu Ping that the demon transformation bracelet belonged to the spirit beast taming sect. And Sang Yu had only noticed the shrunken demon transformation bracelet on Lu Qiner and Lu Taohua before noticing that they were demons. However, since Sang Yu could see through Lu Qiner's identity, it was hard to say that other practitioners did not have secret techniques like the spirit beast taming sect's Jasper spiritual pupils. In fact, Lu Ping's own 3 pure eyes was not inferior to the Jasper spiritual pupils, but both were focused on different things. Fortunately, Ancestor Long Huai had placed a seal on Lu Taohua all those years ago, and it was able to conceal her identity. Unless she encountered a cultivator that was even more formidable than Ancestor Long Huai, otherwise, even the spirit beast sect's jadeite spirit eyes would be useless against her. However, Lu Ping's request for Lu Taohua to wear the demon transformation bracelet was not completely useless. Although the Longhuai ancestor had hidden her identity, it could not change the fact that she was a demon. Without the demon transformation bracelet, the secret that Lu Taohua was not a human practitioner would be exposed. At least if she was seen as a demon, she would be protected by Lu Ping's status as a spiritual pet. If her identity as a demon was exposed, even a Dharma adept would not be able to protect her. Early the next morning, the entire little town was in an uproar. Today, the 18 minor forces of Hebei's cultivation world would enter Rich Jade Swamp to encircle and annihilate Mara. Cultivators from all over gathered in the little town, ready to follow behind the 25 forces. As soon as Lu Ping walked out of the inn, the void in front of him trembled. Under the horrified gazes of the surrounding cultivators, the void rippled like water, and from the rippling void, a sound-transmitting sword suddenly stretched out. Teleportation was a technique used by Dharma adepts. Because of yesterday's events, there were many people in the town who had been waiting for Lu Ping. Seeing Lu Ping nonchalantly accept the sound transmission sword, Lu Ping said something to the sound transmission sword. Then he pushed the sound transmission sword into the spatial ripples and disappeared. Immediately after, the turbulent spatial ripples calmed down. Luckily, Zhou Donghuang had not been blinded by greed yesterday and had not tried to snatch the treasures from him and the two girls. This person indeed had a Dharma adept backing him up. However, where had the girls who had been following him gone? After Lu Ping recovered the sound transmission sword that Guo Tianshan and Lao Zu had sent, his face was filled with worry. From the information that Guo Tianshan and Lao Zu had sent, it seemed that what Sang Yu had said yesterday was true. Furthermore, the situation was more complicated than Lu Ping had imagined. There was no lack of Dharma adepts among the cultivators who had heard the news. Under such circumstances, just Guo Tianshan, Liang Tianfeng and Chu Tianqing, the three early Dharma adepts, would Lao Zu be able to cause much trouble? If these three Lao Zu were to be exposed, there was a possibility that they would die. Have you heard? This time, under the spiritual martial sects initiative, 18 small and medium-sized sects in Hebei have come to encircle and annihilate Mo Luo. There are 25 Dharma adepts, led by a late Dharma adept of the spiritual martial sect into the Yingyu swamp. That's not all. This time, besides the 25 Lao Zu, each sect has also sent a total of 81 late core forging adepts. It is said that these adepts are all at least at the 8th level of the core forging stage and have the potential to become Dharma adepts in their respective sections. This time, the sects in Hebei have put in a lot of effort to surround and kill Mara. Humph. There are various cultivators hiding within this little town. It is not just the loose cultivators from the Hebei region. There is also a considerable number of cultivators from the Hunan region, the flatlands downstream and the upper reaches of the Hunan region. Who knows how many more of them are hiding around this little town. This siege on Mo Luo will surely be a bloodbath. I wonder how many people will survive. Listening to the discussions of the surrounding cultivators, Lu Ping extended his divine will outwards. Indeed, he found that there were far more cultivators in this small town than he had imagined. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and looked up towards the northern sky. Immediately, he heard a loud shout from a cultivator in the distance. They're here, the cultivators of the 18 sects are here. The cultivators in the small town looked into the distance and saw 25 streaks of rainbow light streak across the sky, leaving long shadows in the sky. In an instant, they flew over the small town and flew towards the Yingyu swamp. Indeed, there were 25 Dharma adepts. An overwhelming pressure swept over from afar, and the cultivators who had gathered in the small town let out a roar like a tsunami. Without waiting for these cultivators to react, the streaks of light had already flown over the small town, flying in the direction of the Yingyu swamp. For most cultivators, this was the only time in their lives that they would experience such a grand scene. Seeing the 25 streaks of Dharma adepts disappear into the horizon, many streaks of light shot up from the small town and the vast plains around it, chasing after the 25 Lao Zu at high speed. However, just as these streaks of light disappeared, the cultivators in the small town suddenly exclaimed, "Someone else is coming." I'm afraid they are the 81 late core forging stage cultivators from the 18 sects. When the crowd looked up, they saw more than 10 streaks of 5-colored streaks of light whistling through the sky. Although these streaks of light were not as vast as the previous streaks of 7-colored streaks of light, there were more of them. Together they looked like countless meteors streaking across the sky. When the streaks of light flew over the small town and headed towards the Yingyu swamp, the cultivators in the small town and the surrounding area were completely stirred. Hundreds of streaks of light shot up into the sky in an instant, following the streaks of light from before as they flew towards the Yingyu swamp. Then an endless stream of streaks of light rose up from the surroundings, forming a colorful curtain of light that stretched all the way to the horizon. Even though Lu Ping was considered to be experienced and knowledgeable among cultivators of the same level, when he saw the huge scene of cultivators flying up one after another, he felt his scalp go numb. The cultivators who entered the Yingyu swamp first might face greater danger, but there was no doubt that they would have more opportunities and gains. Those who dared to follow the cultivators from the various sects in Hebei into the Yingyu swamp were naturally cultivators who had some confidence in their own strength. Among the thousands of cultivators, not a single one was below the core forging stage. In fact, there were very few early core forging stage cultivators. Lu Ping was not in a hurry to enter the swamp. As he turned to leave, he heard a cultivator next to him whispering, "Strange, didn't they say that there were 81 late core forging stage cultivators from the 18 sects?" Why were there only 80 streaks of light just now? Lu Ping smiled and a streak of light shot up into the sky, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. However, there were still streaks of light rising up from the small town as they headed towards the Yingyu Swamp. The Yingyu Swamp was a place where the Yulon River and the Abundant River released their flood waters during the flood season. As a result, not only was the swamp vast, but it was also covered in mud all year round. During the rainy season, the swamp would become a swamp. Many of the sundries from the two rivers accumulated there, causing the plants growing in the swamp to wither and rot every year before being soaked in the muddy water. Over time, a faint layer of poisonous miasma rose up above the Yingyu Swamp. Although the toxicity of the miasma was weak and even ordinary cultivators could resist it, the miasma was highly permeable and well hidden. Ordinary cultivators would usually ignore it after noticing it. However, after staying in the swamp for a long time, the toxicity would eventually seep into the cultivator's flesh and bones and lay dormant, causing harm to the cultivator. The Yingyu Swamp was vast and dangerous. If Mara were to hide in it, it would be difficult for the cultivators to encircle him in a short period of time. However, the sects in Hebei still discussed the encirclement deadline of 3 months. They were considering the miasma that permeated the swamp. 3 months was the time limit for the miasma to seep into a cultivator's blood. Naturally, the miasma didn't have any effect on Lu Ping. On the contrary, Lu Ping's interest was piqued when he noticed the miasma. The poisonous miasma wasn't too strong, but it was tenacious. Not only that, the poison was extremely stealthy and permeable. If it weren't for Lu Ping's 1,000-poison serpent, which was also known as the mother of all poisons, he wouldn't have been bothered by the poisonous miasma. Lu Ping's protective energy barrier, the myriad poison meteorite star, could absorb all kinds of toxins to strengthen himself. The myriad poison potion in the Golden House was the same. More importantly, once the toxins in the myriad poison potion were strong enough, it would automatically condense into a mid-grade heaven-rank spirit treasure, the Myriad Wonder Dew. This was what Lu Ping valued the most. After he grasped the refining method of the spirit forging pill, the biggest problem he faced was the lack of a heaven-rank saint-rank spirit treasure like the Myriad Wonder Jade Nectar. Previously, he had 3/4 of the Myriad Wonder Jade Nectar on him, totaling 27 drops. But after refining several furnaces of spirit forging pills, apart from the 3 drops of Myriad Wonder Jade Nectar that Jinling had accumulated for thousands of years, the remaining 3 furnaces of Myriad Wonder Jade Nectar were his own. This was also the reason why he wasn't willing to hand over more spirit forging pills to the sect. With so many Myriad Wonder Jade Nectar appearing, Lu Ping still couldn't grasp the consequences of this impact. After a short while, Lu Ping's flight light entered the brimming jade swamp. He propped up the myriad poison meteorite chi and naturally ignored the imperceptible miasma around him. His flight light didn't slow down in the slightest as he flew straight into the depths of the swamp. At this time, after the invasion of a large number of cultivators, the swamp was no longer as desolate and lonely as it was before. The swamp seemed to have suddenly become lively. The dull roars of spells, the crazy roars of beasts, all kinds of mournful screams, and the roars of cultivators resounded from all over the swamp and reverberated in all directions. Lu Ping swept out with his divine sense and went straight to a muddy pond 10 kilometers to the left. Chapter 729. Strictly speaking, the lush jade swamp was a place of exile for the monsters of the Yulon River. Aside from the top-tier monsters with inherited bloodlines, most monsters would only gain sentience after reaching the blood condensation stage. Before that, most of them could only rely on their instincts to train. However, not all demonic beasts would gain sentience during the process of advancing to the blood condensation realm. This included some top-tier demonic beasts that had already gained sentience before advancing to the blood condensation realm. During the process of advancing to the blood condensation realm, these demonic beasts might lose their sentience due to the mutation in their bloodline. They would become savage beasts that could only rely on their instincts to cultivate. This was why both humans and monsters viewed the blood condensation stage as the key to becoming a true cultivator. Human cultivators could only awaken their bloodlines after reaching the blood condensation stage and gain the ability to fly. Monsters, on the other hand, could only gain sentience like humans after reaching the blood condensation stage. Without sentience, they couldn't be considered as monsters and could only be considered as feral beasts. After all, these feral beasts originated from the monster race. Although they didn't have sentience and couldn't be considered as monster cultivators, the monster race didn't just ignore them. Instead, they gathered them in a place of exile, leaving them to fend for themselves. And the lush jade swamp was one of the places where the monsters of the Yulon River had been exiled. Although the feral beasts didn't have sentience, they could still rely on their instincts to train. The only difference was that their training speed would be slower. But without the constraints of rationality, these feral beasts would be even more ferocious when facing enemies. After the lush jade swamp became a place of exile for the monsters of the Yulon River, it had actually become a natural barrier to the cultivators of the Hebei region. It was also a springboard for the Yulon River to invade the Hebei region. A place that was chosen by the demon race as a place to exile the ferocious beast should naturally be a place that was lacking in cultivation resources. However, no one would have thought that this barren land would be home to the remnants of the demonic luo that had wreaked havoc in the cultivation world of the Hebei province. A place that could attract the demonic luo to gather was naturally a place that could help them recover their vitality. Since the demonic luo could devour spirits, there must be a natural spiritual vein in the lush jade swamp. The reason why the spirit martial sect proposed to gather all the forces of the various sects to enter the Jade Swamp and surround Mara was not only to prevent Mara from returning to the Hebei cultivation world after recovering his strength, but also to seize the spirit veins that might exist in the Jade Swamp and establish his absolute position in the Hebei cultivation world. Another important purpose was to clear out the vicious beasts in the swamp and destroy the bridgehead of the Yulon River demon clan that invaded the Hebei cultivation world. This was also the reason why the sects in Hebei agreed to this joint operation. Lu Ping walked towards the muddy pond. He did not expect that he would be able to find a hiding place for the water Azura within a few dozen miles of entering the Jade Swamp. However, he was curious. Could it be that there was also a place where the spirit veins gathered that could attract these water Azura to hide here? However, why didn't his spiritual will sense it at all? Lu Ping stopped a few dozen feet away from the muddy pond with a playful smile on his face. Then he pointed his finger and a whirlpool appeared in the middle of the muddy pond. This whirlpool was strangely tight. The surrounding water gathered towards the whirlpool, and then the water was thrown far away from the muddy pond, leaving only a pile of mud in the pond. Lu Ping looked at the muddy pond and couldn't help but laugh. You can even endure this. Everyone says that the Azura and the demonic cultivators are like locusts in the cultivation world. Don't you want to know how to endure? Lu Ping stretched out his hands and clenched them tightly. The muddy pond quickly dried up. As Lu Ping's cultivation increased, the Sea of Mulberry Fields technique, which was one of the best spells in Lu Ping's North Sea 12 techniques, showed its power more and more, and Lu Ping was able to use it more and more smoothly. Bang! The mud exploded, and the Azura hiding in it could no longer hide. Taking advantage of the flying mud, they attacked Lu Ping. There were 3 great Azuras in the core forging stage. One of the weapons in the hands of the Azura flashed with a blinding light. When Lu Ping saw this cold light, he did not hesitate to use the Autumn Dew sword. The Azuras were good at hiding. Lu Ping being able to discover the Azuras hiding in the muddy pond was already his limit. Since they could be discovered by Lu Ping, these Azuras naturally could not be Dharma Azuras. Thus, Lu Ping was very confident in killing these 3 Azuras. However, Lu Ping did not expect that there would be a great Azura that was close to the Dharma stage and had a companion weapon that had reached the level of a spirit-nurturing treasure. Raging Waves technique. The twin swords, one in front and one behind, created a huge wave that pressed down on the 3 Shuras, preventing them from reaching Lu Ping's range of attack. The strongest Azura held a 2.5-foot short sword in its hand. With just one sword, it cut through the wave formed by Lu Ping's 2 swords and rushed toward Lu Ping. Lu Ping was not surprised. Instead, he was happy. At this time, the other 2 Azuras were afraid of Lu Ping's sword wave and had already distanced themselves from this Azura. Lu Ping's 2 swords suddenly circled around and immediately trapped this Azura in his sword circle. Green Serpent disturbing the sea sword technique. 2 green sea dragons soared into the sky from the sword wave, circling left and right, entangling the great Azura in the middle. The short sword in the Azura's hand turned into a green ball of light and blocked the 2 green serpents. The 2 swords clashed. The Azura's spirit-nurturing treasure cut through the sword scales of the 2 green serpents, but the green serpent formed by fainting autumn sword wrapped around them tighter. At this time, the other 2 Azuras finally broke through the sword wave and came at Lu Ping because Lu Ping was using all his strength to kill one of them. A small black flag suddenly rose above Lu Ping's head. The flag fluttered, and the water that Lu Ping had thrown out from the muddy pond appeared under the feet of the two Asuras. It turned into water ropes that wrapped around the two Asuras' feet. But just as the two water ropes were about to further restrict the two Asuras' movements, the water ropes suddenly thinned and melted into the two Asuras' bodies. Lu Ping scolded himself for being stupid. Water Asuras were gifted with all kinds of water-type spells, so they naturally had a strong resistance to water-type spells. Seeing that the two Asuras weren't affected and were rushing towards Lu Ping, he suddenly heard the wind above him. A seal the size of a small mountain fell from the sky and smashed into the two Asuras, splashing water everywhere. At this moment, a colorful poisonous fog suddenly burst out from the muddy pond that had previously dried up. Then a weak aura followed closely after and diluted in the surrounding air. A colorful figure flashed in the sky. Lu Ping was shocked. There was a poison Asura hidden in the muddy pond. A curtain of water hung down from the water-controlling flag, and white lotuses bloomed on the water curtain. Then 9 lotuses broke in a row and the water curtain caved in deeply. Then it bounced back and a multicolored cloud flew backward, then hovered several hundred feet away. Lu Ping used the same trick again. The water-controlling flag fluttered, and the 9 water vines rolled up and went deep into the colorful cloud floating in the air. The colorful cloud didn't flash as if it was laughing at Lu Ping's exhaustion. It didn't see that when Lu Ping used the water-controlling technique, several golden lotuses flashed on the water curtain of the water-controlling flag, turned into a golden stream of water, and poured into the 9 water vines. Suddenly, a mournful roar came from the colorful cloud. The cloud suddenly trembled violently, and then pieces of cloud began to float in all directions like cotton floated by the wind. Lu Ping looked at the golden color coming out of the cloud in the air and said with a smirk, "Do you really think you're immune to all poisons? You even dare to absorb the myriad poison serum." Lu Ping made a sword spell in his hand, and the 2 green dragons circled more and more urgently, gradually forming a huge water scroll. The light ball formed by the short sword in the great Asura's hand kept shrinking as the water scroll continued to wear it down. Shrill hisses came from the water scroll, and the light ball began to rush left and right, as if trying to break out of the water scroll's encirclement. Lu Ping chuckled and said, "It's too late to escape now." The colorful cloud in the sky dissipated, and an Asura with strange patterns all over its body appeared in front of Lu Ping. It stumbled in the air and finally fell into the swamp. Although this poison Asura was dying from the backlash of the myriad poison serum, Lu Ping could see that the golden color of the myriad poison serum was slowly disappearing in the poison Asura's body. Obviously, the poison Asura was trying to refine the myriad poison serum that Lu Ping had injected into its body. If this poison Asura was given some time to refine the myriad poison liquid, not only would it be able to recover its strength, but its strength would also be greatly enhanced. However, Lu Ping obviously wouldn't give it a chance. Lu Ping reversed the water-controlling technique, and the myriad poison serum that had been injected into the poison Asura's body earlier rolled back, and at the same time the poison Asura's poison essence was brought out. In the midst of poison Asura's mournful screams, its cultivation essence was sucked clean by Lu Ping, and it couldn't have been more dead. In the golden house, in the pool of myriad poison serum made of blue stone bubbled. A drop of wonder dew gradually formed at the bottom of the pool, and finally condensed into half a drop of wonder dew. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He changed the technique in his hand, and the autumn dew sword suddenly broke away from the water, stabbing toward the ball of light that had shrunk to less than 10 feet. With a clang, the water Asura's short sword couldn't block the 2 swords in the end, and the autumn dew sword pierced through its core space. Lu Ping waved his hand, and the short sword in the water Asura's hand flew back into Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping looked at it carefully for a moment, and then regretfully put the short sword into his storage magic tool. The reason why the Shura's accompanying magic treasures were able to display such power was mainly because they were in the Shura's own hands. Under the special circulation of true essence and innate abilities, the short sword could display power no less than that of a spirit-nourishing magic treasure. But now that the flying sword was in Lu Ping's hands, it only had the power of a spirit-nurturing magic treasure at most. However, if the short sword was given to a master refiner, it could quickly be upgraded to a spirit-nurturing magic treasure. Chapter 730. Lu Ping killed the 4 great Shuras cleanly. Although the appearance of a late core forging stage poison Shura was beyond Lu Ping's expectations, it still did not affect Lu Ping too much. Instead, it was plotted against by Lu Ping with the myriad poison paste. After that, Lu Ping absorbed all the essence of the Great Shura and condensed half a drop of myriad wonder jade dew in the myriad poison paste. Lu Ping casually put away the accompanying magic treasures in the hands of the other two Great Shura that had been smashed by the landslide, and then the golden myriad poison meteorite gang rose around his body again. The countless colorful poisonous clouds that were thrown by the poison Shura gradually gathered towards the myriad poison meteorite gang, and then integrated into the protective aura chi. The golden color of the aura chi all over his body became brighter and brighter. Compared to these things, Lu Ping was more concerned about the bottom of the pond, which had been drained of water by Lu Ping's water control art, and only cracked soil was left. Previously, 3 water Shura and 1 poison Shura had rushed out of the bottom of the pond one after another, and a huge pit had been blasted open. A faint spiritual power lingered at the bottom of the pit, and a stench was emitted from it. Lu Ping could not help but frown. This stench was formed by the debris that had accumulated in the swamp over the years, and then gradually decayed after being covered by silt. These decayed things also contained various toxins, and were the main source of the poisonous miasma floating above the swamp. Lu Ping's left hand drew a stroke and a space portal opened. The myriad wonder jade dew in the bluestone pond where the myriad poison paste was located seemed to have found some delicious tautai. A dark red mist rose from the bottom of the quagmire, and then was attracted to the space portal. It gradually gathered above the bluestone pond, and gradually condensed into a 3-foot cloud. When the cloud had condensed to its limit, dark red raindrops fell from the cloud and merged with the bluestone pond. Finally, they were assimilated by the myriad poison liquid. The half a drop of myriad wonder dew that had been condensed from the essence of a late core forging stage poison azura gradually became plump. However, this transformation process was a bit long, and it was unknown when it would become a complete drop of myriad wonder dew. After the myriad poison liquid had absorbed all the decaying toxins at the bottom of the quagmire, the originally weak spiritual chi suddenly became thicker. Lu Ping drew a stream of water from the swamp pond next to him, then entered the quagmire and brought out a stream of muddy water. After a while, the mud at the bottom of the quagmire was cleaned up. So there was a small spirit vein hidden here, but it was covered by the previously decaying poisonous thing, causing the spiritual chi to be unable to penetrate the surface. It seems that a poison azura first discovered the poisonous thing, and then discovered the hidden spirit vein below, so it attracted 3 water azuras. This can be considered a pleasant surprise. Lu Ping took out a set of formation tools from his storage magic tool, and set up a traction magic array at the bottom of the quagmire according to the position. When he returned to Yingshan Immortal Academy, he could activate the magic array to guide the spirit vein back to Yingshan Immortal Academy. Previously, DeBeo found 4 small spirit gathering pearls and 6 miniature spirit gathering pearls in the Fist Valley. At that time, Sage Xianfang and Sage Linan were also present, so on the second day, Sage Xiankai asked for 6 miniature spirit gathering pearls from Lu Ping. Originally, Sage Xiankai was aiming for Lu Ping's 4 small spirit gathering pearls. Yingshan Immortal Academy had already condensed nearly 2 medium-sized spirit veins. If the 4 small spirit veins nurtured by the 4 small spirit gathering pearls were added, Yingshan Immortal Academy would have 2 more medium-sized spirit veins in a year or 2. This would be a great boost to the Immortal Academy's foundation. However, Lu Ping still wanted to use these small spirit gathering pearls to strengthen Huangli Island's spirit veins, so he naturally would not agree. In the end, he could not dissuade Sage Xiankai from coming to him every 2 to 3 days, so he could only give the 6 miniature spirit gathering pearls to Sage Xiankai before sending her away. After the spirit vein became a medium-sized spirit vein, the increase from fusing with the miniature spirit veins was minuscule, so he gave the 6 miniature spirit gathering pearls away. However, Lu Ping also knew that Sage Xiankai was not doing this for the 4 miniature spirit gathering pearls. The Immortal Academy was still in its initial stages, so in order to strengthen its control over the Immortal Academy's territory, they had to send disciples to certain areas to declare their ownership. At the same time, they had to develop and manage some places where spiritual energy gathered. This would definitely have a certain impact on the disciples' cultivation. Right now, if a few miniature spirit veins were produced in Immortal Academy's territory of influence, then these disciples would naturally be willing to serve them. Moreover, the appearance of spirit veins, for regions with places where spiritual essence gathered, was a mutually beneficial situation to begin with. As soon as Lu Ping finished setting up the traction formation, his divine sense discovered something. He frowned slightly, but Lu Ping's hands did not stop at all. A series of restrictions were cast out, and the spirit vein that was still releasing spiritual energy was immediately sealed. Then, his hands moved from the outside to the inside, and the entire pit was filled up. The water that Lu Ping had diverted flowed back into the pond, turning it into a muddy pond. After finishing his work, Lu Ping dusted his hands as if the work had made his hands dirty. Your esteemed self is quite lucky. You actually found a miniature spirit vein just a few dozen kilometers into the abundant jade swamp. Are you in such a hurry to hide it because you are afraid of others finding it? But this is also good, it saves me the trouble of hiding this spirit vein again. Lu Ping turned around unhurriedly, only to see a few rays of light descending a few dozen meters in front of Lu Ping. The leader was a masked woman wearing a green robe. Her body was shrouded in a faint layer of mist, as if to prevent others from prying. However, Lu Ping's divine sense was tyrannical. His eyes had just condensed the sixth wondrous object. The three pure true eyes was like a pair of sharp swords. No matter what methods the woman in green robe used, he was still able to see through her cultivation. A ninth-layer core forging expert. Lu Ping looked at the green-robed woman with surprise. Of the 8 cultivators following behind her, 5 had reached the 7th or 8th layer of the late core forging stage. The remaining 3 cultivators were at the 6th layer, and 2 of them were women. The green-robed woman felt some fear from Lu Ping's gaze. She walked on the edge of danger all year round, so she had a natural premonition of danger. She could feel that the cultivator in front of her was definitely not as simple as an 8th-layer core forging cultivator on the surface. Not to mention that he was aware of their situation, but he still went about his own business without the slightest bit of worry. As if dissatisfied with Lu Ping's calm demeanor, and dissatisfied with Lu Ping's unscrupulous treatment of their elder sister, the 2 late core forging cultivators fiercely said, "Elder sister, why are you wasting time with this guy? Just tell him to hand over the guiding formation plate and get lost. If he doesn't agree, then he can stay here today. There are many wandering ghosts in this Jianghu swamp, one more won't make a difference." Lu Ping's eyebrows twitched. He suddenly thought of a famous cultivator in Hebei. He looked at the green-robed woman again and said with a smile, "The 9 bandits of Cyan Fox? You're quite lucky to be able to see such a famous cultivator in Hebei. This trip to the Jianghu swamp was not in vain." The 9 bandits of Cyan Robes were a wandering cultivator faction that roamed Hebei and the lower reaches of the Yulon River. They didn't have a base of operations and could only commit crimes in these 2 regions. They had robbed many cultivators and small forces, and were quite famous in the 2 regions. The leader of this group was a female cultivator named Cyan Fox. She was powerful and as cunning as a fox. She liked to dress in cyan, so she was called Cyan Fox. Her subordinates were also called the 9 bandits of Cyan Fox. The 9 bandits of Cyan Fox had done the most amazing thing in the world of cultivation. With the strength of 9 people, they defeated a small force called the Diligent Snow Sect. The reason for this was that one of the young masters of this force had unknowingly taken liberties with the leader of Cyan Fox and was killed by the other members of the 9 bandits of Cyan Fox. Afterwards, because they were in this sect's territory, they had no choice but to fight against the cultivators of the Diligent Snow Sect. In the end, they won. To be able to become a small force, this sect had to have Dharma idol Laozu at its helm. The 9 bandits of Cyan Fox had set up layers upon layers of arrangements. First, they had killed 3 late core formation cultivators of the Diligent Snow Sect who had rushed over upon hearing the news. Then, when they faced the Dharma ancestor of this sect, the 9 of them set up a Tao soldier formation that had been lost in the world of cultivation for a long time. It was called the 9 Palace Clear Void Formation. They severely injured the Dharma ancestor and forced him to flee, shocking the entire flatland and the cultivation world of Hebei. Afterwards, the 9 of them took advantage of their victory to attack the Diligent Snow Sect's training grounds. After a round of looting, they retreated. The Diligent Snow Sect didn't last long before collapsing. Because of this raid, the 9 of them had disappeared for a period of time. When they reappeared, almost all of their cultivations had significantly increased. In the 2 regions, they were like the sun at high noon. However, after this battle, this group of people who should have been more rampant became more and more low-key. They appeared less and less in the cultivation world of the 2 places. This also made it difficult for some sects of the 2 places who wanted to make an example out of them to others to track them down. Lu Ping didn't expect to meet these 9 legendary cultivators here. However, he didn't panic. Although their 9-palace void formation was powerful, Lu Ping still had to give them a chance to surround him. Lu Ping didn't expect to encounter these 9 legendary cultivators. Although the woman in the lead wore a veil, it still couldn't hide her enchanting charm. She smiled and said, "Your Excellency is so calm. Even after discovering us, you still want to hide the spirit vein. You are confident that we won't reveal the secret of the spirit vein. I wonder where your confidence comes from?" Although the woman's words were directed at Lu Ping, she was actually reminding the 8 subordinates behind her not to be impulsive. Since the other party was so confident, it was obvious that he still had some tricks up his sleeve. Lu Ping looked up at the woman and a hint of admiration appeared in his eyes. To be able to dominate the cultivation world of the 2 regions for decades with the strength of 9 people, whether it was in terms of wisdom or strength, was not something that ordinary people could compare to. It was no wonder that the diligent Snow Sect's Dharma idol Laozu had fallen to her. Chapter 731. How should I address you? Greetings, Azure Fox. Jianghu looked at Lu Ping with bright eyes. The 8 bandits behind her spread out, but they didn't surround Lu Ping. Instead, they seemed to be searching for something. At the same time, the 8 bandits each prepared themselves. Lu Ping could see that the 8 bandits had formed a defensive formation around Jianghu. Lu Ping smiled, paying no heed to the 9 bandits' actions. He cupped his hands in greeting and said, "I am Lu Xianping." Lu Xianping? Jianghu mulled over the name. Lu Ping was intrigued and asked, "What's wrong? Do you know who I am?" Ever since the Green Fox 9 bandits had injured the diligent Snow Sect's Dharma adept, very few people in the world of cultivation would address Green Fox as young lady. Unintentionally, Green Fox found it refreshing. "I've heard that there's a new sect in the world of cultivation in Hebei called the Yingshan Immortal Academy. There's an 8-stage core forging stage elder Xianping in the academy. More than a year ago, he defeated the 3 heroes of the Gu clan single-handedly with 2 swords." Lu Ping was surprised by Azure Fox's intelligence. "Oh, I didn't think I would have such a reputation. Even Boss Azure Fox has taken notice of me." When the 8 bandits behind Jianghu heard their leader's words, they looked at Lu Ping warily. However, they didn't show any fear, they were just wary of Lu Ping. Sure enough, Jianghu smiled and said, "Elder Lu is too polite. The 3 heroes of the Gu clan are famous existences among the late core forging cultivators of Hebei. However, they were defeated by my 9 heroes of Jianghu." Lu Ping was surprised that the 9 bandits had fought against the 3 heroes of the Gu clan. "Oh, there's such a thing?" One of the core forging stage 8 cultivators behind Jianghu was enraged by his boss's words. If it weren't for the Gu clan's 3 heroes being so shameless and asking their brothers for help when they couldn't beat them, those 3 would have been reduced to bones long ago. After that, he looked at his boss and complained, "Boss, why are you talking to this brat? 7th sister and 9th sister have already checked the surroundings. It's very clean. There's no ambush." "That's right." The other 8-stage core forging cultivator said, "Kid, we don't care which sect you're from. You'd better scram now. We're taking this spirit vein. We're the Azure Fox 9 bandits and we rarely kill. If you don't know what's good for you, you'll die by our hands." Lu Ping turned a deaf ear to their warnings. Instead, he looked at Qing Fox with interest and said, "The Qing Fox 9 bandits come and go like the wind, but now they're interested in the spirit vein? Could it be that they've found a place to base themselves? It seems like the 9 of you are after something big." The moment Lu Ping's words left his mouth, Azure Fox's eyes flashed with a cold light. However, she quickly regained her composure. Just as she was about to say something, the other bandits' expressions changed. 2 8-stage core forging cultivators rushed forward and cursed, "Kid, you're tired of living." As soon as the 2 of them moved, the others had no choice but to follow suit in order to maintain their formation. Jianghu sighed helplessly. She cast out a pair of battle axes that glinted with a cold gleam and tossed them into the air. The axes expanded in the air and the long handles seemed to be grasped by a pair of invisible hands. The huge axes slashed down at Lu Ping like a bolt of lightning. Lu Ping looked at the 9 cultivators charging at him, and his face gradually turned solemn. The 9 cultivators were actually able to superimpose their auras on one person and then suppress him. Once Lu Ping retreated or dodged, he would immediately be surrounded by the other cultivators from the left and right. In the end, he would fall into the 9-palace Qing Su Dao soldier array formation formed by the 9 cultivators. He could only charge forward. At this moment, the huge axe rose into the air and chopped down at Lu Ping. If he faced it head-on, he would have to face an all-out attack from the strongest of the 9 bandits, Azure Fox. This huge axe was obviously a spirit-nurturing treasure. Although it was not as nimble and fast as a flying sword, it was heavy and powerful. Although it was strange for a woman to use it, the power of the huge axe was so strong that even a Dharma adept would not want to face it head-on. Just this axe alone was enough to show that this woman was not simple. Lu Ping's charming autumn water sword and the 2 swords combined. After the combination, the 2 swords had the power of a spirit-nurturing treasure that was condensed from the 8 palaces' treasures. A beam of sword light shot up into the sky and slashed down at the huge axe. True Yuan Sword Qi. This set of sword techniques, which was originally just a small technique, was broken by Lu Ping's powerful inner yuan and unleashed the power of a great technique. The reason why Lu Ping used this technique instead of the original technique of the North Sea 12 orthodox techniques was because the true Yuan Sword Qi itself was different from the 6 sword techniques of the North Sea 12 orthodox techniques. It was more of an explosive technique, even though this technique could not fully utilize the pure and rich inner yuan of Lu Ping. Seeing that Lu Ping actually dared to face her head-on, Azure Fox's eyes lit up, and a look of approval flashed across her face. The other 8 bandits who had already surrounded Lu Ping all looked at him with disdain. So what if he could see through the Dao soldier array? In the world of practitioners, how many adepts of the same level would dare to face their boss head-on? Even Lao Zu of the Diligent Snow sect had been blocked after taking a blow from Azure Fox. Then he was surrounded and seriously injured. Even though Azure Fox was also seriously injured at that time, could this Lu Shenping be more powerful than a Dharma adept? The huge sword light and the huge axe collided. For a moment, everyone was a little dazed. Then the dull sound of the collision traveled far and wide. Within a radius of 500 feet, the muddy water in the swamp was sent flying up 300 feet into the air before falling back down as if it was raining mud. If not for the fact that everyone here had a high level of practice, this rain of mud would have been enough to make them look miserable. The strong waves of spiritual qi affected everyone's divine senses, and the heavy rain of mud blocked their vision. However, the 8 of them were able to maintain the stability of the array with Azure Fox by using the connection between the auras of the 9 palaces' clear void array. However, what shocked and frightened the 8 of them was that, through the connection between their auras, they realized that Azure Fox was in a very bad situation. When the rain of mud had dissipated, Lu Ping was still floating in mid-air, but his face was a little pale. At the same time, there was a hint of surprise in the corner of his mouth. It was as if he found it unbelievable that Azure Fox had been able to withstand his full-force attack. Azure Fox was slammed into the swamp by Lu Ping's sword. She took a few steps back, the splashing mud drenching her green robe. The entire 9 palaces' clear void array shifted with her retreat, almost allowing Lu Ping to escape from the array. How was this possible? Could it be that this Lu Shenping was even more powerful than that Dharma adept Lao Zu? But he was clearly a level 8 core forging cultivator. Before the Azure Fox 9 bandits could suppress the shock in their hearts, Lu Ping let out a long howl and split his 2 swords into 2. Ignoring the other 8 bandits, he spun his swords and flew toward Azure Fox. Azure Fox could actually detect a hint of excitement in Lu Ping's howl. It was a kind of desire, the excitement of meeting a worthy opponent, and the desire to fight with all his might. Lu Ping really did need a hearty battle. In Lu Ping's memories, the last time he fought with all his might was when he escorted Yin Xianchu out of the Dragon Gate and fought against spiritual master Xuanzu. After that, he fought against Zhang Shi on Frost Island. He seemed to be hesitant to use his full strength back then. Most of the battles after that were chaotic. Only the battle against the 3 heroes of the Gu clan could be considered enjoyable, but that was only the battle of swordsmanship. Lu Ping had yet to reveal many of his trump cards. In the current world, how many cultivators of the same level could withstand Lu Ping's strongest attack? Even if there were, one shouldn't forget that Lu Ping had only ever used his strongest attack. He had never used his full strength. This was because his true essence was too heaven-defying, to the point that among the North Sea's 12 orthodox techniques, other than the incomplete Vast Sea's Mulberry Field scripture, and the Sea of 100 Rivers sword scripture, none of the techniques could allow Lu Ping to fully utilize his true essence. Fight with all your might. It was as if the Milky Way had collapsed and the Milky Way had fallen to the ground. The great river flows east was the sword art that Lu Ping was most familiar with and had the deepest understanding of. Cyan Fox felt as if she were trapped in a boundless torrent. Wave after wave of swords surged toward her without end, and she felt as if she could be drowned by the torrent at any moment. The giant axe cleaved down, but it was unable to completely separate the torrent of sword energy. Even if you cut water with a knife, the water would still flow. How could the water be cut off? Pervasive was the characteristic of flowing water. Lu Ping had unleashed this set of sword skills to the extreme. It was no longer just a set of sword skills, but a real body that had transformed into a raging river that flowed endlessly. Defense. After the Azure Fox 9 bandits mastered this lost ancient Dao soldier formation, this was the first time they had used their full strength to defend themselves in a life-and-death battle. Even when they were besieged by the Gu clan's cultivators during the battle with the 3 heroes of the Gu clan, the Azure Fox 9 bandits could only retreat as they fought. Then, when the opponent was about to win, they suddenly turned around and severely injured 5 core forging realm cultivators before retreating calmly. From the very beginning, Lu Ping had the upper hand in this Dao soldier formation. Lu Ping alone had suppressed all 9 of them, and the weakness was Azure Fox, who was the host of the formation. In front of Lu Ping's absolute advantage, Azure Fox, who was originally the strongest, had become the weakest link in the Dao soldier formation. The other 8 wanted to surround Azure Fox and rescue her, but before they could hand over their Dharma treasures, Azure Fox was about to be drowned by the torrent of sword energy. The 8 could only retreat to Azure Fox's side and combine the power of the entire Dao soldier formation to stop Lu Ping's attack. Chapter 732. The fated lady in autumn waters spun and entangled Green Fox, cutting off any possibility of her contacting the other 8 bandits. 2 of the strongest great bandits rushed forward to attack Lu Ping. But when they saw a sword ray that was even bigger than the one in front of them, they shrieked and retreated. Flying Spirit Nurturing Sword. How can he control 3 spirit nurturing treasures at the same time? The flowing sword was not easily seen through in the Middle Lands. It was just that the power of fated person in autumn waters' harmonious swords was far greater than that of a single flowing sword. However, the flowing sword was a spirit-nurturing treasure that had been condensed with 8 treasures. Under Lu Ping's control, it was not something a late-stage core-forging cultivator could easily withstand. Although the 2 bandits' attacks were scattered, they still landed on Lu Ping. At this time, Lu Ping's main focus was on trapping Green Fox, so he was unable to move. He could only take the initiative to attack and disrupt the opponent's rhythm. Just as the scattered attacks were about to land on Lu Ping's body was suddenly enveloped by a layer of rainbow cloud robe. The attacks that landed on Lu Ping's body only caused slight ripples. The 4th Spirit Nurturing Treasure. The 2 core forging stage 8 cultivators realized that they might have really run into an iron wall today. A mere core forging stage 8 cultivator wielding 4 spirit nurturing treasures in a single breath to fight. Furthermore, the other party's expression was still calm. Could it be that this person was a disciple secretly nurtured by the 5 Holy Lands? The 2 7th-stage core forging cultivators slashed at Green Fox's flying swords from the left and right, intending to rescue her. A drought heavenly thunder exploded in the sky, and 2 thunderbolts descended from the sky, striking down on the 2 men's heads. The 2 helplessly retreated, using all their strength to defend against the bolts of lightning. However, it seemed as though there was no end to the heavenly lightning. First, there were een lightning of water, een lightning of metal, een lightning of earth, een lightning of second wood, een lightning of third fire, and other een lightning of the 5 elements. However, these lightning techniques were clearly stronger than the ones that ordinary cultivators could unleash. Could it be that this guy has the bloodline of the Yuan clan? Or is he a member of the Yuan clan? That's impossible. The Yuan clan's paranoid people have always thought that their family's thunder technique is invincible in the world. They've never bothered to cultivate any kind of sword technique. The 2 6th-stage core forging female cultivators were mainly responsible for restraining and defending the Dao soldier formation. When they saw Lu Ping's ferocious aura, they each released their own protective Dharma treasures, intending to help their 2 companions resist the lightning. However, before the 2 of them could move forward, a golden sword light slashed one of them to the point of tumbling, frightening the other to the point of hurriedly placing the guardian magic treasure that she had already activated in front of her. With a crisp clang, an enormous force came from the guardian magic treasure and sent her flying in one go. However, she didn't notice the slightest sign of being attacked beforehand. In the process of being sent flying, the female cultivator only saw a flash of purple light. Lu Ping shook his head regretfully. After all, he had to split his mind into two parts. Even though his divine sense wasn't any weaker than a peak early Dharma adept's, and the 8 strange Jiao dragons in his heart core were surging and breathing out endless true essence to support Lu Ping's battle, he still couldn't control 3 flying swords at the same time, 1 spirit-nourishing treasure robe, 1 psychic 7 thunder treasures gourd, and 2 psychic flying swords at the same time. Under normal circumstances, even if the water spirit sword couldn't hit the 6th-stage core forging female cultivator, the huge force of the sword would be enough to seriously injure her. Now she was only sent flying. There was still a 6th-stage core forging male cultivator left. Seeing that Lu Ping didn't use any tricks to deal with him, he thought that Lu Ping had also reached his limit. Instantly, he relaxed and took out one of his magic treasures to attack Green Fox, who was getting tighter and tighter with the Autumn Dew sword. He didn't expect to be able to break through Lu Ping's dual flying swords. As long as he could cause the dual flying swords to pause for a moment, he believed that his boss would definitely be able to seize the opportunity to break out of the encirclement. This was a tacit understanding. However, before his magic treasures could fly close to him, he suddenly heard a loud noise in his ears. Following that, it was as if a training ground had appeared in his mind, and all sorts of sounds poured into it. His eyes reflected the 9th sister's anxious cries at him, and then he couldn't hear a single word. The magic treasures that were originally flying towards the dual flying swords suddenly became crooked, as if they were drunk and had no strength left. With great difficulty, he retracted his divine sense that had been scattered by Lu Ping, and the colors of the world finally returned to his eyes. However, he felt a warm sensation flowing through his nose, mouth and ears. When he touched them with his hand, he discovered that they were all bright red. Before he could feel the lingering fear in his heart, the cultivator who had just recovered his hearing heard a long laugh. When he looked up, he saw that the cultivator who had been trapped by his own formation had already risen into the air, completely escaping from the formation's range. Although the Azure Fox 9 bandits live up to their reputation, they can't do anything to me. Today's battle was very satisfying. If fate allows it, we'll compete again. Today we'll part ways. The Autumn Dew sword flew back and Green Fox stood there in a daze. The other 9 cultivators turned pale with fright and they cried out, "Boss, big sister, are you all right?" Green Fox reached out and touched the top of her head. The 2 ends of her hair were neat and shiny, and she held them in her hands. Her jet black hair flowed down from her head to her waist like a waterfall. The other 8 cultivators felt a chill run from the top of their heads to the soles of their feet, and they were all stunned speechless. At this moment, Green Fox suddenly stepped forward and shouted toward Lu Ping's departing figure, "Since you're leaving, we the Azure Fox 9 bandits will take this spirit vein." Lu Ping's figure didn't stop and he didn't turn around. Only one word drifted over from afar. "How dare you!" At this moment, Green Fox shouted to the 2 female cultivators behind her as if in a fit of pique, "7th sister, 9th sister, dismantle his formation." The 2 female cultivators looked at each other. Although they felt that their big sister's order was a little inappropriate, they couldn't find a reason to refute it. The 2 of them stepped forward and were about to cast a spell to break open the muddy pond that Lu Ping had restored. However, just as the 2 of them arrived in front of the muddy pond, 3 rays of light, 1 white, 1 blue and 1 purple, suddenly erupted from the muddy pond. Demonic cultivators. Green Fox cried out in alarm. However, the 2 female cultivators couldn't dodge in time. They felt a sharp pain in their legs and just as they were about to kill the 2 demonic snakes, they saw a whip flying toward their faces. Under certain circumstances, the face was even more important than the core space. The 2 female cultivators cried out in alarm and hurriedly retreated, but the 3 rays of light were already shooting in the direction that Lu Ping had left. Even Green Fox couldn't react in time. Not only was she exhausted from her battle with Lu Ping, but more importantly, the 3 rays of light coordinated well with each other and were no weaker than the 2 female cultivators. As the 3 rays of light left, Green Fox could clearly see that they were 3 small snakes about a foot long, and each of them had a cultivation of the 5th layer core forging realm. Lu Ping's ethereal voice came from afar. "Don't even think about curing the poison. Once we're done with the lush jade swamp, we'll just have to make a trip to the lush mountain Immortal Academy." Green Fox rolled up 7th sister and 9th sister's calves. The 9 of them had only relied on a lost ancient 9 palaces clear void Dao soldier array. Are we just going to let it go like this? The one who spoke was the 8th, the 6th level core forging adept who bled from his nose and mouth after being shaken by Lu Ping's will. Of the 9, he was the most wretched of them all, suffering heavy injuries before even exchanging a single move with Lu Ping. This caused his hatred for Lu Ping to surpass his fear. Green Fox gritted her teeth and said, "Come, let's go find my sworn brother. He's also at the lush jade swamp. Perhaps he has a way." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.